thing for me is like, you know, Kropotkin and Stalin and Lenin had massive ideological differences, right? Like, I mean, Stalin literally wrote books saying this is why Kropotkin's strategy is not going to work. This is why I disagree with anarchism. All of that, right? Like they wrote ideological work. Like they did that. They had these ideological disagreements. At the same time, you know, when USSR was being built, you know, they extended the same rights that every citizen in USSR got to Kropotkin as well, and in fact gave him an honorary Soviet burial when he died, as you know, like as a contributor. So it isn't like it's not because they understand they were at least against the fascist forces, even though I do think that anarchism and coming I was an anarchist myself, but I think anarchism does have intrinsic limitations in not individuals who call themselves anarchists necessarily because they can break away from the theory and the philosophy in a sense, but the theory and philosophy of anarchism I find to have limitations, right? And just like Stalin did. So,
That's
yeah.
like this. So we had this brief back and forth yesterday, and I appreciated it because I was just like, um, you had communicated like you think that there's limitations to anarchism. I would say that there's like limitations vice versa, and that is, not grounds for us to, I don't know, like we could still form a coalition, you and I, and that was like the through line for what we were discussing,
Yeah.
which I appreciated.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, like I said, in the example of the USSR, there's coalitions formed there, right? Like the idea that like there is this kind of narrative that happens, I think, where they will just say, "Oh, well, the MLs they betrayed the anarchists after the revolution every single time or something." And that's not really what happened. You know, like there is more nuance. You can go and look at every situation and find much more nuance than that, right? And you find many more anarchists lived fine, happy lives under USSR and actually found their lives got much worse with the overthrow of the USSR. You know?
Yeah, I think that there's like well tread ground that like other anarchists and Marxist-Leninists have butted heads about, like historically with the USSR and like Spanish Civil War and stuff like that. And I've read about it. I've read about it from both sides, and I think that my conclusions on like those specific historical events are I I see like nuance. I see successes and failures, but it doesn't change necessarily how I feel ideologically. And if someone gets like really heated about a conflict between anarchists and communists that happened like 100 years ago, I don't think that that serves any purpose besides team sports. Because again, like I didn't know those people. I wasn't there. That wasn't my struggle, even though same struggle across the board all throughout history,
Yeah.
which is anti-imperialist in nature. So I don't know. That's why I'm like,
Well, and I'll be
I
honest,
think
like
I'm
for
more
me,
interested in
my
like the ideology than the history is important. So I'm not like discounting that, but maybe you understand my drift on that.
yeah, no, I'm to add to that actually, like I do study the histories of those things to understand them, right? And what happened.
Yeah.
And like I said, in many of the instances where we're being like Marxist-Leninists are being accused of like betraying anarchists, or some examples where, you know, many of anarchists today would look at what those anarchists were doing and they would say, well, though they're not fucking anarchists, really. Like, you know, at least the groups that were engaged in these things that like caused this friction, like between the Ukrainian elements of the Ukrainian Black Army and USSR, for example. But again, like you say, these are there's specific historical examples, and we can look at them and get an idea of some of the dangers and some of the questions we might face. But history never repeats itself, right? Like sometimes history might
It
rhyme,
rhymes.
but it never
Yeah.
repeats itself, right? And like that's something that we need to keep in mind. The thing for me is, like, yes, I do have an opinion about all of these distinct moments in history, and like I do have some views on them, like you say, but that's not the primary thing. The primary thing for me, again, is it is the like an ideological difference in the way, if you go back, debates between anarchists and communists, like between Bakunin and Marx, and between Lenin and the anarchists, it's a different, a lot of it in my opinion ends up being a difference in defining things, like such as the difference
Yes.
in our definition of the state is like one
Yes.
of the major ones that I see, or even a
Yes.
difference in the definition of authority, where
Yes.
that's another one where I see where I I even see what happens sometimes is, instead of debating about authority, the debate ends up devolving into the word authority, or debates about what centralism is and how much centralism should play a role. And mind you, these debates aren't just in the anarchist community as well, right? But it's also disagreements in the Marxist-Leninist community we got going on also, right? Which is like what's the same lack of nuance with some Marxists that are, China can't have market forces. It's not socialism if it has market forces. Stuff like that, right?
If there's one thing we're very good at, it is infighting. So it happens here's what I'll say about this is like, I would caution anyone. I think labels are helpful. They're very helpful until they're not.
Yeah.
So I would caution people that, like, if you find a label, an ideology that really speaks to you and you resonate with, that, don't just co-sign everything underneath that umbrella. Like, really think critically about each like subtopic and form your own opinion, because there's things I'll probably say during this stream that anarchists would vehemently disagree with. In fact, they will, and they're gonna let me know. It's I think that sort of stuff, like co-signing everything under a specific umbrella, first of all, I think it's antithetical to anarchism, but also it's just team sports. Like, I'm not interested in which team is better
Yeah.
at all, actually.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't be talking to you if I didn't think that like Marxist-Leninism was something that is absolutely preferable to our current economic systems, our current arrangement of the world.
Yeah. Well, let me say that Marxism-Leninism here in the West
Mm-hmm.
is completely distorted by Western Marxism, which is what has like which is one, like, I recommend everybody go and read Gabriel Rockhill if you're able to, who paid the pipers of Western Marxism, is a really illuminating book, because it talks about like one of the biggest problems with Marxism here is that it has become divorced from the actual struggle on the ground. It becomes a dogmatic academic thing, and then that leads, I think, as well, to like a feedback loop of misunderstanding what Marxism-Leninism actually is. Gets it gets siloed into all of these little segments that, like, and really Marxism-Leninism is about, it's not about like looking at Marx and like seeing what Marx said when he was drunk on Thursday, about what the definition of socialism is, or how to build, like he gave us, and the most important part about Marx is the revolutionary essence that he gave us. And like what's so misunderstood about Marxism is that it is a creative application that is not rigid about how centralized something is, or how decentralized something is, or how much market forces we use, or how much how much planning we use or whatever else, right? Because what dictates all of those things is the material conditions that we're surrounded by and also the forces that we face against, right? But at the end of the day, Marxist Leninists want to build a movement that speaks to the masses. We want to lead the masses. So while we stand strong on our principles, we don't shy away from talking about what we see as the limitations of anarchism or democratic socialism or or democratic socialism or whatever you want to call whatever it is, right? We don't shy away from those things because we just believe that we have the correct program. And by calmly explaining our program, it will win people over as they run up against the limitations in their various experiences. That's not a way to like insult these other groups. It's just we're in a struggle that is very serious. We want to oppose imperialism, right? Let's have these difficult conversations about where the differences are, where like what we do believe, what we think the limitations of each other's philosophy is, and let's still try and build against the fascist forces that are always getting stronger all the time, right? And
Yeah.
that's like the thing for me because Marxist-Leninism is non-sectarianism, which means Marxist-Leninists, while we will our primary goal is to organize in a party and we all abide by a party line, you know, what we all these things that we all agree to, but then we also go out and exist in as many organizations as possible because broad coalition building is important. We're going to be liberals are going to be the majority even until the time of revolution. That's just the way it is because we need the control of educational institutions to be able to remold people into socialist people. So before then, you have to win them over by correctly reflecting the direction they're struggling against the bourgeoisie, which is why again we explain our differences between the democratic socialists, but I'm not like out here trying to win over every single democratic socialist because they have a role to play as well. They'll get these leftists elected, people run up against the limitations of that, and then they go looking for an alternative program. And that's why we're in the DSA, that's why we're in Veterans for Peace, that's why we're in the peace coalitions and all of these other groups to be non-sectarian, to fight for the rights of those workers, regardless of if we agree or not ideologically. We will take them
Yeah, I
along
mean,
with us to communism, is our view.
to exactly that point, I want to say like I'm part of the DSA, which I think you know, there's absolutely, I mean, glaring flaws and limitations to the DSA. But I think that my presence in there provides a vehicle to normalize the ideas that I don't think should be as scary as they are. But that's like not the limitation as well. It's like I also volunteer and do other things in my community. You know, it's multifaceted mosaic approach to having you know, a community worker oriented you know, future is I'll also say this. I think that I also want to like maybe dispel if anyone has like the concept of anarchism as like this maybe juvenile adventurist type pursuit where people just want to go out and burn a cop car or burn down like a government building. And that is like your activism. That isn't, I mean, like those people certainly exist in my spaces. I don't think that that represents anarchism that I subscribe to. I see it less so as like this. I'd say communism is like my destination. I do want like a stateless, borderless future. And I see anarchism as more of like a discussion of what power is, how it behaves, who should hold it, should it be abolished entirely. It's like a conversation about power. And I think that most people's interaction with anarchism is more of like the flashy, you know, it's propaganda, right?
Yeah.
It's to appeal to people who are anti-establishment, anti-government.
Yeah. So, I mean,
But there's more to it.
what I want to
Yeah.
say is, like, I hope you know and your audience knows that I'm not coming at understanding anarchism as adventurism.
Yeah.
Adventurism is adventurism. That's why I specifically talked about, the philosophies that, like I say, I myself was an ANCOM. I was an anarcho-syndicalist before.
I want to know more about that. Let's start there. So you changed your ideology over time. So tell me how you started. Like, what about anarchism appealed to you, and then how did you fall out of love with it?
I mean, I kind of defaulted as an anarchist in a sense, it being a city native, growing up hearing about like the way colonizers destroyed my like family's community, which was a matriarchal community. The reason why it was broken up, which happened to a lot of Mi'kmaq communities, which reduced the amount of reservations by a significant degree, and sent a lot of native women into like cities and stuff like that, where also what happened was if they were to marry like a white person, they would also lose tribal status. And yeah, so this is kind of like the background for it, I guess. And then and then I guess for most of that I wasn't so much politically conscious, I just called myself that. And then I did start studying after in high school. I started studying like anarchist literature, um and then I was first like into like Claire and some other people, and I can't remember all the names now, but Clairvoyant and a few other people that I used to read. And then I eventually changed into being anarcho-syndicalist and then anarcho-communist, and I read like Kropotkin and a bunch of other work organized in some groups that were around here as well. Um, and then, yeah, I kind of just met some Marxist-Leninist other Mi'kmaq people who were working in the Friendship Center here and also working for the Communist Party. And just like through several months of essentially communicating with them and reading material that they were giving me and reading the material that I had, I kind of like realized like the nuance that I was kind of like wanting from the philosophy, and kind of like some of the solid answers I was wanting from anarchist philosophy, the text that already existed, I was finding existed in Marxism. And that's kind of why I switched at first and started studying about USSR history. And I still was kind of like really green with it. And then a comrade of mine from the Dene Nation, from the Navajo Nation Socialist Party, they introduced me to Juche before I even knew, like, understood that that was DPRK's like philosophy. And I started reading about Juche and how that interacts with Marxism-Leninism. And that's kind of like what unlocked, I guess, the final key in my head, where I was able to like understand that Marxism-Leninism, like I say, is this creative guide to action, and not this rigid dogma of something you apply. Like, you don't read Lenin and apply Lenin. You read Lenin as a guide to action so that you might be able to avoid the pitfalls of the past. But our Marxist-Leninist revolution here, the communist revolution here, will look nothing like revolutions elsewhere in many respects. But the thing that it like but the thing that Marxist Leninists really want to do, I realized, is they do want to put hands in the power of the people, right? The not wanting unaccountable hierarchy, especially through reading DPRK's work, I realized that's what Marxist Leninists do. They create systems that fight against unjust hierarchies. And that starts with the anarchist commune, for example. They build up these systems that want to challenge power further and further. And as socialism develops, that continues. I think what happens in the mainstream, and a lot of the credit is due to Western Marxism for this, is a misunderstanding of what socialism means. The definition of socialism, and again, I say the definition of the state itself, right? Because we, like you said before, we do want a stateless future, right? We want a stateless, potentially borderless future, like, or at least borders as we know it today. These distinct lines have been abolished, right? Remember, there is borders, not the way that settlers and Westerners understand it, but overlapping places where native communities would overlap each other, and we would come together and decide how to manage the natural resources of those areas, right? So that was something done um without class, like without a class cleavage, without a class fighting going on, right? So that was just a natural way that humans existed. So yeah, I totally agree with that. The thing is, I think Western Marxism distorts kind of the Marxist-Leninist program, because I see some people will say, like, oh well, DPRK or USSR, or they'll take whatever socialist country and they'll say, well, that hasn't achieved statelessness. That hasn't achieved statelessness in DPRK yet. So what's the deal with that? I guess Marxism has failed. But this is what I mean by a misunderstanding of the state and socialism, because what socialism is the revolution, right? Socialism itself is the revolution. Some people mistake revolution as just being this one moment in time, this really violent upheaval, and then that's it, right? But really, the revolution is this continuous process of revolutionizing everything. And there are periods where there is violent upheaval and clashes, of course, right? There is class cleavage that is irreconcilable. That's why we're in a class conflict. So there is going to be that. We want it to be on the side of the working class, of course, because the working class has interest in ending all classes, whereas the oppressor class, of course, has interest in always perpetuating an oppressed class, They always have an interest in keeping that around. So socialism is like, it might take many, many generations, but my question with people who say that is, how could you expect the state to go away with external imperialist threats still going on, that then also reproduces internal threats because of connected bourgeois elements, because just wanting to bribe people in the country to try and destabilize it and open it back up to the markets that the West then wants to make money from, right? So we should understand that the state, even if we have a different definition of the state, we should understand that until imperialism has been dealt with, how could you expect the state to go away? And then the other side of this coin that I will say is the difference in the definition of the state. Whereas, yes, the state is an exercise of power, and we do agree that it has a monopoly of violence, but some of the disconnect, I think, comes from the fact that Marxist-Leninists don't consider all centralization, and we don't consider all administration to be the state. We believe that there can be administration. There can even be centralism without there being a state. And this is because we define the state as an apparatus of social control, an apparatus of class control to perpetuate class violence and the class interests of one class over the other. Now, what I mentioned before, remember the bourgeoisie, they have that interest in maintaining the existence of this class conflict, the existence of these two opposing classes, because you can't have an oppressor class without the oppressed class. So their state always wants to keep that going. This is why Engels called the state that we set up, what we call socialism, the semi-state that is withering away. And this is what kind of gets distorted, because the reason it's withering away is because it is a state that exists to, one, defend against those external threats like the United States and the imperialists, and two, to actually fight class conflicts to their conclusion so that the oppressor class is eliminated. And then that makes everybody, not necessarily the working class proper, but it makes everybody members of the working masses. And then you also have to, of course, foreign people ideologically get rid of the individualism in their head. And these are the tasks of the semi-state. And as these tasks are finished, those classes are done away with, and so the instruments of class oppression also fade away. And so that's the transition into a higher phase of communism. Now, when would that be? You know, many generations from now, because you think we've got thousands of generations of class society in our heads. It could take that long to deprogram all of this individualism and all of this class society in her head, right? And to me, it's like if the semi state has to go on for thousands of years to prevent imperialists from reemerging, then I'm okay with that. And I see like that the example of DPRK and China, we see that that state is always revolutionizing itself to be put into more and more hands. Sorry about the long rant. But I hope that
No, it's okay. We're both yappers. I think my skepticism comes from I'm skeptical of the idea that a hierarchical power structure could abolish hierarchy in the long run. It doesn't seem like people who have this sort of division of control at the top are going to be the kinds of people who let go of power incrementally over time. That being said, I will say, like, you're telling me the DPRK is decentralizing, it's withering away, but I would just ask, like, what do you think we would observe from the DPRK as it goes towards this, decentralized ideal? How would we see that manifest?
Well, I think we kind of already are seeing it in many respects in the way that localities, the local governments, are becoming more and more self-sufficient and able to decide their own local politics, what their own architecture is going to look like, what they need to build for their own factories, how that distribution is going to work, which is like that's sort of the model of us. I do want to say though that like we actually disagree on the idea that Marxist-Leninists have this incremental power, because I mean, that's the whole purpose of like recall, the whole purpose of the way democratic centralism exists is in order to make it so that it's not power from the top down, but power from the bottom up. That it's the majority is agreed upon, and then that is basically united in action, right? That's why it's called that's why it's called democracy in discussion and unity in action. And I just want to say that, like, instead of a parliament like what you have in the United States, the foundation of this is actually the workplaces themselves. And this is why in DPRK, the Supreme People's Assembly, which is the actual highest legislative body, which even appoints Kim Jong-un to his position as the military commander and actually has the authority to remove him if he wasn't, fulfilling his job. The Supreme People's Assembly is made up of workers and farmers and intellectual workers who serve for 5-year terms, but they can be reelected indefinitely. Like, one of the most popular chairpersons of the Supreme People's Assembly was this little street sweeper lady who drove this street sweeper in Pyongyang. And she was elected, and chairperson of the SPA just means, you're talking, you're giving whatever. But nobody has authority to like veto anybody. Nobody has any emergency powers. You have, again, they discuss the thing, they have to vote on it, and the majority vote has to be decided by all. And that's in the highest legislative body. That exists in every single legislative body, every single government body, every single government office, all the way down to your workplace itself, which also operates in that same manner. And then every time a factory is built, that will mean a new representative now in the Supreme People's Assembly. So each time there's a new neighborhood, each time there's a new workplace, that adds delegates and deputies to it. And all of these deputies are also accountable to their constituencies who can recall them. Like in DPRK, for example, one of the biggest changes is local judges and county judges are now nominated and elected by the people of the county and the locality. Like they literally they have multiple rounds of nominating candidates and then rounds of electing them. And even the same way like the party works, right? There is this illusion that for example DPRK is this one party state because the Workers' Party is enshrined in the Constitution as the leading party. But that's just because people unfortunately understand the standard of democracy as being the West. These competing parties where one pretends to represent but I think one thing we can agree on is that the Democrats and the Republicans really only represent the corporate interests, right? That they exist as a dueling party to give this illusion of choice that allows capitalism to perpetuate itself as long as possible.
I think like you're always going to be more knowledgeable specifically on the DPRK than me. What I can say is like I don't object any way, shape, and form to centralized administration. My issue is when that centralized administration has political power, and that political power creating a hierarchy that just institutionalizes social standing. It's like the discrepancy of someone above me telling me what to do, and I don't have the ability to obey or disobey or you know. I think that a organization of people, I will always recognize and respect authority from expertise, from you know, the sense that like, of course we're going to build things and I'm going to ask the builder how to build things. I don't know how to build things, but I don't. That isn't like an authority that is political in nature. I take issue with the discrepancy of political powers, like primarily. So if what you're saying is, and again, right, you're going to be way more well read about the DPRK than me, that they are sort of allowing citizens, you know, far more direct democracy than the United States to choose leaders. I'm in favor of that, but as long as like the leadership isn't, you know, that leader that is chosen doesn't have any priority standing above me, that person isn't doesn't get special treatment, special
See, but this, I mean,
treatment under the law, under the state.
yeah, I just want to point out that this is a problem that goes back to Lenin's time, right? Like this is literally what, because the reason why they use the reason why we use the Paris Commune as their example is because the problems that you're talking about right now are exactly because it's what the workers in Paris were setting up their government to fight against, right? And Marx analyzed like what the problems were that they had and what we could do to overcome them. USSR showed that we could overcome those problems. However, it did not overcome the problem of bureaucracy, which is the problem you're talking about right now. Because I
think it's those bureaucratic structures that end up just they become the same you know, structures that were overthrown in the revolution.
Well,
they start to look exactly like the ruling class that was overthrown.
Yeah, but they do in a sense, right? And
yeah.
Well, but they only do this when the system itself, like if it has become corrupt in a sense. But like with the USSR, right? This is not down to just individual leaders, if you will. It's not down like it comes down to all kinds of incorrect forces and choices that were made that led to corruption. And so the problem with USSR, this is why we say the problem with USSR wasn't Marxism-Leninism, it wasn't socialism, it was corruption. It was that they stopped following the essence of Marxism-Leninism. They stopped creatively adapting it to their own situation and fell into what we would call a Trotskyist trend. Um, and like what you're talking about.
What exactly what would you say is the remedy there if there is like a potential in the USSR and other places for a an individual to sort of like go rogue and abandon ideology? What sort of safety mechanisms are in place to prevent that from happening?
Yeah, well, this is like what I was trying to discuss with DPRK, right? I know it's a it's a hard one because we're living in, again, a Western experience where you look at DPRK and so many Westerners go, well, first of all, it doesn't have the Western standard of democracy of the two parties fighting each other, like I was talking about earlier. And second of all, they're Eastern people, they're Asian people. So there is a form of infantilizing, I think, that happens as well that says, like, well, Korea can't possibly be more advanced a society than the United States, right? Because of whatever. But I will say that DPRK,
there's Orientalism across the board, like any sort of painted with xenophobia.
And the reason why I wanted to mention Western Marxists before is because I wanted to point out that these problems we're fighting against in the Marxist-Leninist communities as well, in our own Marxist community. Okay. Like I said, Gabriel Rockhill just released a book that's fighting against like this very phenomena, right? But it's like DPRK saw these problems of because here's the thing. One thing I will say that is, and this might be an unpopular thing. I just hope you let me say this piece, and then I'll continue on with what I'm saying, which is that one of the problems I found with anarchism is that there is no dominant strain in a sense. There is no there is lots of different ideas and lots of different beautiful philosophies and lots of different ideas, but none of them are kind of like a dominant strain of it, if you know what I mean. Whereas with Marxism, there has been this legacy and this project, like this is why, we don't shy away from saying we're part of the USSR project. Even though it made serious fucking mistakes, even though it fell into bureaucracy and, had all of these problems, we still are part of that legacy. China, we're part of that legacy as well. DPRK, we're part of that legacy. And DPRK, if you actually look at Kim Jong-il's works, you can see the criticism that he had for USSR, right? He looked at USSR too and said, the number one problem with USSR, and we can't discount the outside forces. Of course, the USA did a great deal in undermining and doing what it can. You could almost say the USA overthrow the USSR, right? Really. It was against the will of the people. They even held referendums that, while they were a little bit sneaky and dastardly, if you actually look, most people wanted the USSR to stay. Most people wanted their socialist system to remain. Even if they did have a mistaken, dreamy idea about what capitalism in the United States was. They still wanted their socialism and they didn't want the USSR broken up, right? Even though it was corrupt in all of this. The problem they had was the corruption in their country. And in a sense, the imperialists were able to use that against them in order to rally them behind reactionary forms of nationalism, like in Ukraine or in Latvia or in other places, or in Russia itself, where it created like this confusion and, again, this narrative of democratic centralism being commanding and administrative or totalitarian and these other things, right? When it was only command, and they were able to disguise this in two ways. Democratic centralism to the corrupt elements, to the people who are against communism, it was that. It was standing in their way of bringing back capitalism. But because of their own corruption, and the people were against the corruption, the idea that democratic centralism was administrative and commanding fooled a lot of people. And they went, yeah, so let's get this multi-party style democracy that the West has, and then we will overlay this with our socialist system. And, we see what happens as soon as that was opened. Yeltsin disbands all the other leftist opposition parties, bars all the leftist newspapers, and even shells the parliament at the time. And people in the streets fought against this. So the multi-party democracy that the West had and that the people were fooled into brought them even worse corruption than what they already had. It didn't fix the corruption, it made it so much worse. It institutionalized it because capitalism is institutionalized corruption. So Kim Jong-il analyzed this, right? And Kim Jong-il, this is why DPRK has set up different measures in its government that allow people to recall their own deputies. It's why I say, when you say about that authority and power from above, the reason the DPRK calls its party the motherly party and calls its politics benevolent politics isn't to fool people. It's because them and China is shifting this way very rapidly. They realize that the government's job needs to be to serve the people. And in a socialist society where you're trying to have all of these social wages, you want to grant everybody universal education, you want to grant everybody universal health care, you want to house everybody like DPRK, you want to guarantee housing, you want to guarantee prescription equipment and all of these other things. Well, then you need you need the distribution and the ability to do this, right?
I think to what you said before about anarchism not having a main, right, defining dominant framework, I think is an accurate assessment. But I think that that's more of a strength than a weakness, because exactly as you said before, the way that revolution is going to have in different parts of the world, it's never going to look exactly the same anyway. So having a more flexible approach to how to organize people, I think, is something that could be more valuable than anything else. I would say that also it if I were to assign a central guiding dominant framework, it would be that anarchism already exists. There's this is the way that people interact in their day-to-day lives, neighbors caring for one another without some sort of being told to do so. That is anarchism. That is there is only equals in that equation. And it presents itself in other ways as well. If you want to go to the mutual aid, or you say you were a syndicalist, so I assume you Rocker, using these unions and other places that people organized without these sort of administrative frameworks that are more analogous to the state. Those are places where anarchism already exists. So it's more about upscaling and spreading the idea versus, getting people to change their behaviors. They're already doing it. And I think that it's also human nature as well. I think when it comes down to it, there are desires for people to, I should say, it's not linear in the sense that we have developed from hunter-gatherers to where we are now. And I'm not even saying that you're making that argument. I'm just saying that the mosaic structure of how anarchism can manifest separately is historical. It has historical backing in that people organize themselves in vastly different ways throughout history, and it wasn't a linear trajectory either. So you could have people who do end up having like something that resembles a dictatorship in human history, and they could go to something more decentralized. It like ebbs and flows, and it's regionally dependent. So I would desire a framework that is as flexible as that to, you know, combat the complexity of human nature, of human existence.
But see, I mean,
is where I would go.
That flexibility is what I would already say. That again, that is what a correct application of Marxism-Leninism is: flexible. The fact that there exists this through line that I'm talking about doesn't discount that. Right? Like, science itself is flexible. When science discovers new data, and particular data for a given condition or a given situation, it must adapt itself for that, right? And that's exactly what Marxism-Leninism seeks to do. It's why the USSR revolution doesn't look exactly like the Korean Revolution. But again, we don't shy away from us being connected to that legacy of that.
It's so like, maybe it's more of like as you said, like definition wise, maybe also it could be like disagreements about like vehicle to get there. And I'm not even like denying that Marxist-Leninism has these same principles at all. Actually, I think like the main disagreement is the vehicle to achieve what we are looking for.
So what do you think is the difference in the vehicle? Because I mean, just again, like I just saw someone in chat say anarchism is dynamic by design, not prescriptive. But again, that's, as I explained from the very beginning, Marxism-Leninism by its very nature is not a prescription. You can't, that's why we don't look at Marxism for a definition of what socialism is, because Marx never lived in socialism. Instead, we look at actually existing socialism for a definition of that. So
to answer your question, I think it would be like, parallel power structures. And I'm not saying that Marxist-Leninism doesn't have this as well, but like direct action, mutual aid, unionizing, organizing your tenants, forming a tenants union, like all of these parallel power structures are things that like already exist. And that is the vehicle to achieve, the same goal, I suppose.
But again, like I said, Marxist-Leninists, although we organize ourselves together because we obviously all agree on things, we believe that we are at a level of class consciousness that most of the masses are not at, right? Which is why, again, I kind of highlighted before that we are non-sectarian, which is why Marxist-Leninists engage in mutual aid as well. Marxist-Leninists engage in parallel power structures as well. Again, we will go into the DSA. There's Marxist-Leninist caucus in the DSA. We'll go into the Veterans for Peace. And we go in there not to like turn everybody into Marxist-Leninists, but to try and raise awareness, try and raise revolutionary consciousnesses of everybody. Because if you allow me to give you a Kim Jong-il quote, tell me how anarchist this sounds. He said, consciousness and voluntariness is their true nature and the stance of the revolutionaries. Because it's the job of communists, like just like you're explaining, it's the job of communists to go among the people, to learn what they need, to adapt ourselves to their needs, to their material conditions. We can't also just do that mechanically because, again, they have lots of false consciousness. So we have to also try and uplift them, not in a violent way, not in a way where we're coercing them, but in a persuasive way, where we're serving the people and saying, here, unlike these capitalists, we want to build institutions that serve you, alternative institutions. We don't want to just take hold of the capitalist state, right? We want to destroy the capitalist state. Because again, the semi-state that we want to set up destroys the last vestiges of the capitalist state, which is not just the government, which is not just the state, because even when communists have control, even when we build a dictatorship of the proletariat, there will still be capitalist state institutions left over, institutions of class coercion. But now you have gained the upper hand, the working not Not the party, not specific leaders, but the working class themselves are now in control and have the ability to dispense with elements of capitalism as they're ready for it. It's not up to the party to do that because the party can't like just set economic laws or economic rules by itself. It has to discover them in society. The thing I was trying to point out with DPRK and with socialism is you have to remember, again, because of all of the social wage that a socialist society offers, it has no money essentially left over for it has enough money to like reinvest in production, and then it is essentially out of money, especially when you're talking about in this imperial in the current configuration where imperialism sanctions and embargoes these countries, right? Which is why Korean currency, like DPRK currency, isn't even accepted. Because of the way they distribute it, the US says, well, it's not even real currency, right? And like the way how does a socialist government sustain itself? By forcing people, right? Do you think that like the last 90 years or so of DPRK, it would have been able to sustain itself by like force or by having a gun to everybody's head after they threw off Japanese imperialists for so many years and after they threw off US imperialists, right? It's not Kim Il sung or it's not the Workers' Party lording over them. It's that the people have thrown off these oppressors and are building a new society. If the reason why the government in DPRK has the unity that it does, the reason why it has the support that it does, in a way that like it's mind-boggling to people in the West. And like I say, China's moving this way as well. It's because they realize that the only way the revolution can survive is by the party, by the government gaining mass support. And how does it do that? By serving the people, by being accountable to them, by having a cadre system where the people below are able to remove their superiors the moment they're not doing their task. Because young people and people from below are the ones who will clearly be able to see when someone is not doing their job, right? And then this is in addition to every party member, including Kim Jong-un, makes the average of the maximum wage of society. That's enshrined in law. You're not allowed to make any more than the medium of the minimum and the maximum. So teachers and scientists make more than party members as a way to try and fight against careerism. And then more than that, you're seen as, if you're joining the party or especially if you're in the party, but if you're in the government in general, because in DPRK, you can be a member of any party and still be elected into the government. You can in fact be you can be no party. You can just be an independent guy. And if the people in your neighborhood like you or in your workplace like you can be elected to the Supreme People's Assembly. And then you can stand up and give your belligerent ass opinion if you want to, right? But everybody also has the right to vote against you. Like you are like those mechanisms exist. And again, the reason why it has this unity, the reason why it seems like it moves like as one is because it has had 80 years, 90 years of the government really. It hasn't always done 100% of the correct thing. It's not a utopia. But what they do see is the government promises, it goes among the people, and it promises to try and fulfill these things for the people, give them all housing, give them all education, give them necessary food, guarantee them these things, even in the hearts of sanctions, and they see that it does that. And over time, that increases the loyalty of the people to the party, which then strengthens its ability to overcome those capitalist elements. Because it's the people wielding their own power.
To the points you made about like Marxist-Leninists also have like these same mechanisms and emphasize them in similar ways. I think we're going to end up like agreeing on that sort of stuff continuously, because everything you said about the USSR and the DPRK, all the good things that they've done, I don't discredit that. I acknowledge it and I like it too.
Yeah.
So it's not like, by no means am I saying that those institutions are like outright out of pocket bad and destructive in nature. In fact, I think they're far more preferable to anything we have right now. And I would never stand in the way of those kinds of things manifesting. It's more so, I would suppose, like a priority, and maybe like points to emphasize. I would say like this is something that I still want to do a lot more learning about, more reading about, because I the danger of lapsing into familiar structures of power is my primary hesitation. And even if there are like means before you that mitigate or treat that specific impulse, I think that by its nature, having the power distributed as it is will just create divisions that you know you don't have to necessarily be a dictator to be authoritarian. And I know that like authoritarian is a buzzword, but my point being that these relationships, these familiar relationships that we have right now between imperialists and the global South, like those sorts of domineering relationships can and will manifest regardless of if someone is elected or chosen to be above them. That's what I would say, like primarily. So we're going to end up agreeing like that, like specific practices are good and just and more favorable. Like I think continuously. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, see, I just like again, it's just there of course when we're talking about you know, a socialist society, which again to clarify, I I consider a revolution itself, right? Because remember, revolution has mundane things where people are just working restaurants and doing things in the field and they're educating themselves on science and technology and revolutionary ideology. And then there are periods of serious upheaval. I understand it as a multi-generational process, right? Whereby it's not the party standing over them. Again, it's the masses themselves who are building these things. And I just want to say that like I do disagree that we're taking the same power structure. Like I think that is the misreading of anarchism, of a misunderstanding of the state, if you will. Because that's imagining that we could take hold of the bourgeois state and use it towards our own ends, which that's we don't agree with that. The first step of Marxism-Leninism, the first step before we can build a dictatorship of the proletariat, before we can build any, like here in the US, for example, or Canada or wherever else, the first step before we can have a dictatorship of the proletariat, before we can have socialism, is a democratic revolution, first of all, which destroys, a foreign power that is occupying the country, or in the case of the United States and Canada, the settler colonial entity that is latched onto this society. Like that is the first step, is that democratic revolution. And the democratic revolution, which again features upheavals and ebbs and flows, and it can go backwards and it can have retreats and it can have gains, but that democratic revolution exists to smash the bourgeois state, to destroy the bourgeois state institutions and replace them with proletarian state institutions, including replacing the parliament, the House of Congress, whatever the fuck you call it in the United States, I don't know. The parliament, right? You want to abolish the parliament and replace the foundation of society with those unions, with those workers' councils. That becomes the new basis of, that's what the Soviets meant, right? Like that's what the Soviet was. When the interesting thing about USSR is they had a period after after they got out of the war, not right before they got out of the war, I should say, where they said, we have this provisional government, we have a bourgeois government, And the Bolsheviks essentially looked around and said, you know, the mood of the people is far more revolutionary than we expected. We expected them to get this democratic republic and be done, and you know, then be satisfied, and the revolution would cool down. But the people are ready to continue on. So what we should call for now is all power to the Soviets, which is what they did, and that's why the provisional government was overthrown. And again, there was mistakes set up with the Soviets and with the way USSR government was set up in its like very first socialist state organization. But at the same time, the mistakes allow us to learn some things and allow us to try and avoid similar mistakes. Again, we'll have vastly material differences, but the thing that we do have in common is that we're fighting a class struggle. And so that there will be a certain amount, like we said in unison before, there will be a certain amount of rhyming going on. So, you know, studying that experience will be good so that we can, as much as possible, avoid rhyming exactly the same way, right? And that's like,
I think like regardless of the way you look at it, like whichever future we have, there's no way around. There's going to be a substantial amount of luck involved in how things get executed. I want to, before we get too far away, because you said we disagree about like what a state is. So I would give you like my definition is like the Graeber definition that has a monopoly on violence, has a monopoly on bureaucracy, and you know, restricts your specific freedoms, like your freedom of travel, your freedom to disobey orders. These kinds of things like infringe on your personal freedoms, and that is, you know, the powers inherent to a state. So as long as a state can, you know, monopolize violence, monopolize bureaucracy, it's still a state in that definition. Do you have a different?
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, we agree in some of those respects, like the monopoly on violence, for example, right? Again, bureaucracy, we understand in a capitalist society as being a perpetual thing because corruption is a perpetual enshrined thing in capitalism. Whereas under socialism, again, as I said before, bureaucracy that exists under socialism, even though we have even though we have set up those radically different institutions, like I said, we have smashed the capitalist state. However, bureaucracy can still reemerge even in these new state institutions because people still have individualist mindsets. They still have greed. They still have careerism. They might still, even though they're paid that medium wage, they might still try and use their position, you know, in this other way, which is why fighting bureaucracy is a part of socialism as well. So we do agree on some respects, but for us, the main thing that defines a state is not those things. The main thing that defines a state is that is an apparatus of class control where one class enforces its interests on the other class. And that is the foundation of the state itself, because it emerges
how does a state where there's one class that holds more power than a different class, how is that egalitarian in nature, just like from an abstract sense?
What do you mean?
Like that is a hierarchy, and like I said before, I'm very skeptical of the ability for.
Well, how are you defining a class in that sense then? Well, you're saying the oppressed class having the power is a hierarchy?
You said that there's one class that implements its rules upon another class.
Right. So let me explain it real simply.
That's like a hierarchy where one class has more importance and more rights and more privileges than another class, regardless if it was chosen or not.
Right. So can I explain that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so what we understand by class is a juxtaposition. A class isn't something that you're, you know, I mean, you are born into it in the way that class works in today's society, but class isn't a demographic. Class isn't like you earn this much, so you're in the upper class, or you're in the middle class, or you're in this other class, right? That's not how Marxist-Leninists define class. Marxist-Leninists define class in a dynamic juxtaposition. Now, of course, the relationship to the means of production is important to understand this class. But perhaps more important than that, is that it's a dynamic juxtaposition to another class. Now, this is very important because what we actually mean by class is that, on the one hand, and this is why the thing capitalism has in common to feudalism, and the thing feudalism has in common to slave society, is that we believe there's an oppressor class and there's an oppressed class. Those are the two big camps of society. Now, in the past, you have had subclasses in between this that has somewhat muddied this relationship. In slaveholder societies, like in Rome, you have plebeians, you have all of these other middle classes. Also in feudalism as well, you have all of these middle classes. In capitalism, what ends up happening is all of those middle classes are destroyed. All of the fetters of feudal society, all the pre-existing, like the old way of organizing things, gets destroyed, and everything gets turned into commodity production. The peasants are stripped of their land. They no longer become peasants. So what happens to them? They become proletarians. The proletarian is the most exploited class because it stands the most naked. It is without property. It is without anything. All it can do is sell itself, sell its own labor power in order to make a living, in order to survive, in order to just get enough to eat. So what I'm saying is class only exists in this dynamic juxtaposition with each other, the oppressor class and the oppressed class. Now, because there's an oppressor class, they also, of course, take control of the means of production, which is the ability to generate all of the goods, all of the wealth, everything in society. Even though we work the means of production, even though we do all of the work of the means of production, the oppressor class get all the benefits from us working there. So when I'm saying that one class imposes its will on another, understand that today we live under a society where the oppressor class imposes its will on us in what is called capitalist societies. What we want to do is not put a little government, not to put ourselves in power, not to put like the Marxist-Leninist Party in power even. Because the Marxist-Leninist Party, even in DPRK, is actually independent of all the state organs. That's why I said you can be independent and you can be on the highest legislative body. You can't do that in the United States. Not so easily. Not just because you're popular in your neighborhood. And like, again, the reason is because it's not putting power in the hands of a new ruling class in that sense. It's taking power out of the oppressor's hands and putting it in the oppressed hands. And that's why in that society, people who go against the people's interests, people who are capitalists, are the ones who face justice. Whereas in our society, they don't really face any justice. It's working people who commit crimes of poverty who face justice.
I think like, I'm not arguing for neoliberal democracy and what the class divisions that you talked about are definitely preferable to what we have. Hands down, I would say that any day of the week. My ideological opinion is that it is the nature of these class divisions themselves that entrench a us and them, regardless of intent, regardless of safety stops. And
so can I just ask how you abolish class all at once then?
Well, I think that it's there is no way that you can like drop everything immediately, which is why I would have parallel structures to fall back on incrementally. But my point being is that, if you have, the most ideal version of a ruling class, it is still just by its nature holding political power over the underclass, the other class. It is below them, and that power is inherent to that division itself.
But see, we're not. I think this is where there's a misunderstanding. We're not creating anything. These classes already exist. Again, right now in society, we have the oppressor class and we have the oppressed class.
I get you.
What we're doing is getting rid of the oppressor class as the ruling class and putting those at the very bottom at the top. That's the job. That's what socialism does. And as socialism develops, the more and more the working class spreads, the more, because remember, the class division will still, just like you said, right? At the moment of like the first upheaval of us actually gaining the upper hand over the capitalists, those class divisions will still exist. Because the capitalist class has worked all of this time to keep class cleavage. Even though the working class has interest in settling the class conflict, in other words, ending the class conflict, the oppressor class, in order for them to keep their heaven on earth, they have to stay as their oppressor class. They have to maintain an oppressed class. They have to always have proletarians no matter what. Otherwise, they cease to be an oppressor class. So I think again, we're not seeking to. It's because it's not. You have to remember the society is not decided by individuals, even in government. Even today in the United States, while they play a huge role, they do so by fooling the masses and having the masses work with false consciousness in their interests. And that's how the ruling class is able to rule, which is why they're so concerned with what the masses are thinking, more than like how well you eat. They don't care if you starve to death. They don't care if you're eating poison. They don't care if you live like in the most, disgusting environment ever. All they care about is your opinion on like are you still going to the elections? Do you still care about the elections? Do you care about America? Do you want to, like as long as you're passively supporting of that, then you're fine with them. Right? Like we're seeking to create.
What I'm speaking to is more so the bureaucracy that falls into old patterns that we were talking about before. I understand,
but we want to
the ideas of the proletariat becoming a dictatorship of the proletariat. I get that element. It's just I don't think that any sort of position that allows someone to become this bureaucratic runaway thing that we both don't like. I think that bureaucratic, runaway entity that doesn't, adhere to Marxist-Leninist principles is more likely to occur, not like definitely going to occur, but more likely to occur if there are people placed with higher political importance than anyone else.
See, again, I just disagree that they're seen as having higher political importance. Like, because even in DPRK, like where you see people rally behind the image of the leader, it's very easy for us to look at that and say, oh, well, Kim Il-sung has higher political importance. He's the most, but really what his image represents is like the masses struggle themselves, is policies that they themselves have worked to implement, right? He inspired like the initial movement of this, of again, the free education for everybody, free housing for everybody, 9 pounds of food per month for everybody.
I don't deny that they're great leaders. I would never, I'm not doing that.
But I'm saying it's not a matter of saying that they're great leaders. I'm just saying that like,
but they're
saying
also,
that those people
like,
have higher political importance.
Installed as president for life. That sort of deification, I think, is antithetical to a future in which we distance ourselves from that sort of stratification of power.
But I mean, structurally, the presidency was abolished while he was alive before he died.
But I think that like any organization of government that does that sort of pedestaling is missing its own points in terms of the importance of the worker themselves, in terms of the importance of the proletariat themselves. You're elevating this person beyond them.
I completely disagree, because I don't see it as elevating them beyond them. Kim Il-sung grew up in a straw hatch. He grew up among the working people. He grew up in the plains of Manchuria fighting for revolution. No, he's just anybody. He's a face of a Korean.
If I went to the DPRK and asked people how they felt about Kim Il-sung, they wouldn't feel like, you know, incredibly more favorable to them than the next guy.
I don't know what you mean by to the next guy. I mean that's like, just a weird way of putting it. Kim Il-sung is just meant to be a
historical figure that people place a lot of importance on because he was a great leader.
Okay, right? but again, sure, but at the same time, and again, you can go. I mean, that's kind of an imagined scenario you gave me, but I can show you clips of people who were actually asked this question about their leader, and they themselves said, the leader is not just an individual, he's a reflection of the masses themselves, because they separate him as an individual and his personality from a person who was in the position of the Workers' Party of Korea that could have been any other worker, any other person fulfilling that spot. And what he was passing was policies that the people were militantly, ardently demanding. Things that, again, that
I don't deny that he was great. I'm not going to deny he was great.
Okay, but I'm not just saying he was great, right? Like there's more to it than that. That's what I'm saying.
I hear you, but even if like a population attributes like his success to the success of the people, I'm not like I believe them. I believe that these are all good things. My issue isn't at all with like the case itself. It's more of like the broad ideological aspect, the framework that's overarching there, devoid from the DPRK, which is that a leader is attributed with the has the same connotation as the success of the people. It's like this to me is a mismatch where if Marxist-Leninism uplifts the worker and replaces the dictatorship with the dictatorship of the proletariat, we still have individuals who are thought of as greater than the civilian. Like that is my understanding. I know you're going to disagree.
Yeah, well, we're just going to have a disagreement on that then.
Yeah.
We won't be able to go past that in that sense then. There's Marxist-Leninists that don't even consider Juche Marxist or ML. Yeah, sure, but those Marxists are in the minority. China goes to DPRK's cadre training school, and they say we are both Marxist-Leninist parties working together for revolution. So people in the West can say whatever they want about Juche, but, it's DPRK is respected by other socialist countries. It has essentially the exact same political structure as Cuba does. And again,
there's no aspect of Juche that I like. There's no criticism of Juche that I wouldn't also launch at other forms of governance that have similar structures.
Like what?
I wouldn't point at Juche specifically.
Okay.
I don't know which. I'm not reading chat, so I don't know which chatter said that. That's not something that.
What's the Laotian position on DPRK? Well, they just published an article. If you go to news that I make every day, I recommend that you go here. This is a newsletter that I put together every day. If you go to Monday, August 17th, you will see a newsletter that the Lao Communist Party put out about Kim Il-sung, titled "How Was Korea Liberated?" So Lao feels pretty friendly towards DPRK to struggle. I mean, again, we disagree on the leader thing because I see.
But you know, like
I don't see
that,
it
I
as
think that
somebody
that's
standing above society. Workers are celebrated in DPRK just the same. Like if you're a teacher in DPRK and let's say you've volunteered to go and work on a remote island to teach 2 school students, for example, just to give you an actual example that has happened, you'll be printed in magazines and celebrated, and you'll become a famous person in DPRK. Unlike in the West, where you get famous for serving capital. Like the
I
idea
think
that
like
he's
I would
above
use
the idea
just
that
to
he's
like make
above all the other Korean people in a sense is like is misgiven
I want
because
to
there is
detach
lots
it
of
from the
other famous
DPRK
people in
specifically
DPRK as
because
well.
you're far more well read on the DPRK than me. So I'm gonna like make a fake. I'm gonna do a straw man argument.
Okay.
It is what it is.
Okay.
Is there is a leader of a nation and just like my barber from across the street. My barber from across the street says, I want you, Nick, to go to Washington, D.C. versus the leader of a country tells me, Nick, I want you to go to Washington, D.C. Now, I'm more likely to obey, depending on my background and my feelings, to obey the leader of the country. Because whether I like that person, I don't like that person has inherent power from their position.
No. See, again, they don't have inherent power from their position. Society, this is why I tried to point out, I guess, that Marxism-Leninism is a science to begin with. Because the policy isn't set by Kim Jong-un. The policy isn't set by Kim Il-sung. He's just.
I want to keep it like
Okay, with your imagined guy in a Marxist-Leninist society, Joe Schmo, right? Let's call him Joe Schmo, because just like Maduro, he could have been the barber. He could have been the bus driver, right? Like, this is the thing that I'm trying to get across to you. He could have been the bus driver yesterday. And the people don't see him as above. They just see him as a model worker, maybe to emulate, but they don't see him as above then, because the people themselves are the ones setting the policy. And this is done again because we see you able to analyze society, analyze human development, analyze human relations, and scientifically understand the direction that's headed. That doesn't mean be rigid about it, because science means, remember, having a theory that then you need to apply, and then you need to analyze the application, and then you need to update your theory. And that happens endlessly. You never have a perfect scientific theory. And so what I'm trying to get you to understand is that it's an entire societal effort to come to correct policies based on a scientific understanding of what fulfills people's needs. And it's not done by the leader, it's not done by the party, it's done by a massive effort of society, all those with an interest in taking part in politics. Because politics in a socialist system is changed from being lording over people. It's changed from this bureaucratic, we dictate this thing and you do it, to being service for the people. Politics becomes work with people. And the party puts forward a policy and says, like, let's say, for example, Joe Schmo says, let's house all the people, right? That's a great policy. We really want to do that. But even though the party, which is the ruling party, and it has won that position by gaining it through the revolution, again, to overthrow that previous capitalist system, it says that, and then what its job is to persuade everybody to follow it, because the party doesn't rule in the way the old capitalist parties do. So it puts forward a really good line that it has come to scientifically and says, let's build housing for all. And then it's up to the people who have organized their government in their own way. Of course, there are many Communist Party members who try and get elected into those positions, right? Because they want to participate in politics. And also, the other hand of that dynamic is that because they're part of the Communist Party, there is a certain amount of respect for them in getting a communist education and this and that other thing. So they might have more of a chance of being nominated than somebody who's not in the party. But it's ultimately up to that constituency to decide that for themselves, whoever is the representative in whatever body. And so this is what I'm
So
saying. It's an entire societal effort of coming at the best scientific policy, and then seeing how the masses react to that. And if the masses protest against it, or if there's a wrong reaction, then you need to go amongst the masses and improve this quality. Maybe some people need to be looked at for corruption, so on and so forth. The blame is not put on the people. It's put on those people who said, we want to serve the people. We want to be part of this government apparatus. We want to serve the people, right? Like, those are the people who are accountable to the masses.
I think it's like, right, in that specific scenario where it's an individual sees a need for housing, right? What remind me so I don't like place words in your mouth. They would go to the assembly and gain consent.
Well, so the party would put forward that, we want housing. And so if you were a member of that Communist Party, your job then is to, of course, try and fulfill that. So then you would go to, let's say there's your local Soviets, there's Supreme Soviets, which is the centralized power, there's county Soviets, there's workplace Soviets, there's other political bodies, there's political parties that are like, there's workers' unions, there's all of these political organizations. Some of them part of the state proper, some of them outside of the state, like unions are, right? It would be up to those various party members to go into those to try and get elected if it's a state organ, or to participate in the workers' union and try to convince people that, hey, building lots of houses, that would be a really good idea, wouldn't it? And you're just trying to convince everybody. And then you would have everybody would sit around in, like, let's say the local people's assembly, and you would all give your propositions. And, you might stand up and say, this is why we should build this much housing. Somebody else might get up and say, no, that's too much housing. Where are we going to get the resources? That's too much work or something. And you might have this big discussion. And then everybody would vote on it. And the majority vote is then accepted by all. And that's put into policy. And then again, when that's start to put into place, if people are like, all of a sudden they're like, I don't like this house, this is too many houses in a mass movement, then that would bring the party back to talk about, that would bring the governmental organ, whatever economic organ is responsible for that construction, back to the government to talk about it again, right? Like, there's a huge process of consensus.
Well, I would characterize that, and you might disagree, as bureaucracy. And in anarchism, rather than petitioning, you would, if people are unhoused, you house them through direct action. You pool community resources and you build the house without the long and laborious process that isn't a surefire thing.
What if your community has no resources to build housing?
Might stand in the way of that person getting what they need, and in the meantime they suffer, right? So that's, I think,
what happens if your community does not have the resources to build housing, though? What if it's missing a key resource?
If it's missing a key resource, then, in this scenario, right, there would be a federation of specific peoples that can share between different communities. So if one community is lacking, the federation of communities picks up where the other community is lacking.
But what if imperialists have destroyed that neighboring community? What if imperialists have stolen the resources of that neighboring community?
They probably have, yeah. This is, I think that we agree that anti-imperialism has to be at the core of whatever formation of.
It's the primary contradiction, right?
We have in the future.
It's the first thing that has to be dealt with. I think we can agree on that, right? That imperialism has to.
That is the first thing, but it doesn't stop there. Like, once imperialist capitalists are gone or subjugated to a point where they can't fuck shit up, like. It continues. That's
Nick, we agree on that. We agree on that. Imperialism is just the first contradiction, right? Marxism-Leninism understands that once that primary contradiction is dealt with, right? And this is why we fight against the idea of us being class reductionists, because also, first you do away with that imperialist contradiction, that allows you to fight the class contradiction even easier, do away with that class conflict by getting rid of all the elements of the leftover ruling class. And then that allows you to easily deal with patriarchy, sexism, all of these other hangovers from the old societies. And then when all of that is taken care of, humans will no longer be living under a structure that is oppressing, that it has to keep away the oppressor class, because they're all gone. People have now been re-educated. So now they can live in free association with each other, taking as they need and contributing as their ability is able to the society, right? And there's no longer a state, because everybody takes part in administrating. There still needs to be distribution. There still needs to be decisions made.
Of the goal, like that gives me some solace at the very least. Free association is definitely where I'm oriented as well. So that's,
that's, yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. In my opinion, look, in my opinion, coming from my own anarchist communist experience myself,
sure,
you're like a Marxist-Leninist in denial. You just still have some hang-ups over the rigidity of Marxism-Leninism and what the state means. I don't like that.
I feel like it's belittling in nature to be like, I'm, just
well, I really don't mean it in
the making.
But look,
I don't really care for that too much, to be honest.
But look, let me say this.
I do understand what you're saying.
Let me say this, though. The reason I say that is I don't mean it to be belittling, because politics should not be so rigid as you pick a label and you stick with it, right? If you're presented with evidence and you're presented with concrete evidence that demonstrates a particular strategy or a particular tactic is wrong, you would update that, right? And
sure, but you can admit that it's dismissive to, discount me as, I think that you're this. Like,
I mean, I don't think I'm discounting you at all. I don't think I'm discounting you. I just think that there's particular.
I don't think that you intended to. I just placing labels on people is not a.
Okay, well, I don't mean to place a label on you. I'm just meaning it to say that I think it just comes from a misunderstanding of Marxism-Leninism. Like you say, you haven't studied
the most common feedback that I get from Marxist-Leninists. I've heard it before, for sure.
I mean, I was an anarchist for years myself, so I heard it myself, and I rejected it when I heard it too. Like, I don't mean it to be belittling in any way.
So let's piss off the anarchists too while we're at it. I think where I diverge from like my peers who think about anarchism is in the revolution, and you characterized it in a way that I agree with, that it's not one singular event, but something that is long and undefinably gray in terms of stopping and starting, but I in the last year or so have come to the realization that there does indeed need to be some central administration in a revolution, from the position that decentralized, disparate groups with similar causes are just too easily co-opted, too easily subverted by any number of ideologies. So I think that like the strength of the revolution, the revolutionary movement, is something that should be centrally administered. But I don't think that central administration
Juche is what's happening on this planet,
should come with political power.
Right. Can I read you
yeah.
Oh, well, again, that depends on how you define political power, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you define political power as, if you're talking political power as like the oppressors for the first time ever, like fighting back against the oppressed fighting back against their oppressors for the first time, if that's what you mean by political power, then I'm for political power in that sense. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm searching for that train, you idiots. You won't even make it to Shitville.
Again, like controlling someone.
To say that socialism doesn't work is to overlook the fact that.
Yeah, for me, I think that the type of society we want to build, and socialism, and even DPRK, I really truly believe shows us, even though you're kind of presented it as this monolithic, like gray, like monotone, everybody's the same kind of society. Look, they all got the same haircuts, they dress the same. If you actually look, like DPRK, even in their architecture, from town to town, has so much more individuality than anything that exists in the West. Like, sure, the same town, because they're building huge amounts of homes for huge amounts of people as fast as possible. In one town, it'll be like cookie cutter homes. But if you go to the next community, it'll be a completely different architecture style, a completely different... thank you so much, comrades, everybody, for the shared hype train. We appreciate you.
Let's go.
So I just want to say, like, the type of society we want to build is not to restrict individual independence. It exists in order to allow individuality to blossom more readily, because we're doing away with those capitalist forces that restrict people's individuality. I want to read you a quote by Lenin, though, if you don't mind.
Sure, absolutely.
This is from State and Revolution, and I just think that it kind of, like, maybe this will speak to you a little bit. Okay, he's responding to people who are lumping them in with anarchists, actually, incidentally enough. And he says, "The hopelessly indoctrinated simply cannot conceive of the possibility of voluntary centralism, of the voluntary amalgamation of the communes into a nation, of the voluntary fusion of the proletarian communes for the purpose of destroying bourgeois rule and the bourgeois state machine.
Get in there.
Like all reactionaries, they can imagine centralism only as something from above, to be imposed and maintained solely by a bureaucracy and a military clique."
Searching for that train, you idiot.
That's Lenin, State and Revolution.
The shit, Phil.
Wow, thank you so much, comrades. The gift subs, it means a ton.
How much did you get?
I don't know what we're at. I just got 5 now from Chiclas, but we've been rolling here for a minute.
Very nice.
So does that speak to you at all? I knew you, because you were just saying about needing centralism, right? So an accountable centralism, one that cannot lord over people.
For any revolutionary force, I do think that there needs to be like strategic centralization.
Get in there. 2 boxcars full of weed just like this, okay? Okay. Take rear control. Don't fuck up.
Okay, this is it. Let's fucking move it.
Boys, I got the Swayze Express.
Good. Load it in the car. We gotta hook up with Sparson in 6 hours.
The whole world's searching for that train, you idiots. You won't even make it to Shitville.
As well as the failure of the Gen Z protests that occurred last year. And what I witnessed was, for one, it was like for the student Gen Z revolution, it was a popular uprising from like legitimate concerns that young people and all kinds of people had, but it was immediately co-opted, subverted, distorted, and it led to, a furtherance of the exact same things that led to the unrest to begin with. To be clear, it's the young people had an issue with like an older style of governance, and they felt misinterpreted, misunderstood, ignored. And the result here is that they just replaced the old, asshole with a young asshole without solving any of the actual issues.
Yeah.
So the momentum from that uprising just completely fizzled, and was adopted by, liberals who adopted the revolutionary aesthetic and presented themselves as revolutionaries. And I think that in order to counteract that sort of insidious nature, there has to be a very robust and central, coordination, administration, whatever you want to call it. But like I said, that doesn't come with political power. I don't think that revolutionaries,
again, the way you're defining,
by their nature, have inherent, legitimacy to govern after the revolution is,
Well, see, we all agree. We agree on all of those points.
Yeah.
All of those things we agree with. There's no inherent right for revolutionaries to govern afterwards.
Anarchists that are going to be upset because they don't want that.
Yeah, no, I
I'm
mean,
saying that's where I diverge from the potentially the what someone else might say.
and look, let me point out too that like this is why I found the Juche question in chat kind of interesting a second ago, because like we'll even like I'll tell you, like, even from the perspective of us, we'll look at countries that might not call themselves Marxist-Leninists and say they're on that revolutionary path, because to us, if you're on the path of revolution, if you're on the path towards communism, to us that means that you're on the Marxist-Leninist path. That's why there is that saying that Che Guevara, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but he has that famous saying that says, "It's not my fault if my heart's on the left and reality is Marxist." Because, again, the way you're defining political power, I agree. Because I told you my definition of political power, so we have a different definition there. So when I'm saying about voluntary centralism, when I'm saying about the party, it's not like an inherent right of these individuals to rule. The party is just, it's the general staff, where the most advanced elements of the revolution who have studied Marxism-Leninism are. And those who are not following revolution have the ability to be removed. Now, this does not mean that mistakes aren't going to be made. This does not mean that they're, even as, and this is why it is so important for us to uphold the legacy of previous revolutions, to study what went wrong, because you got to remember that it's not just bad actors that can rise up from below that want to restore capitalism, but it's also external actors that are brought in by imperialists, right? That also are brought up into that party to be wreckers and and to try and worm their way up. So, of course, the biggest mistake the party could ever make is being top down in the way you're describing. Because what would happen is the party would fall into bureaucracy. It would fall into a pattern of becoming political in the way you're saying, and abusing its power, becoming bureaucratic. That would divorce itself from the people, and the people would no longer be like trying earnestly, because again, that generalized policy of the party deciding what we need is lots of housing. Well, that's very general. Right? Then it would be up to all the people to decide how to actually apply that in reality, what that actually means for their given situation, so on and so forth, right? So, like, that's one of the biggest mistakes, because then when the party puts forward a policy like that, they'll go, "Oh, well, they're just a bunch of corrupt motherfuckers. I don't care about that." They won't be enthusiastic for the revolution. They won't be putting forward these things. So now so you'll have a party that has fallen into an unscientific direction, that is no longer reflecting scientifically the direction that the masses are trying to build in. And as we know, this is what Marx meant when he said, all of hitherto society is a class struggle. I love the way Juche puts this, because it says, well, the underlying reason for the class struggle itself is that humanity has always struggled for its independence. Whether that's independence from the fetters of nature, not that it'll ever realize this completely, it'll never separate itself from nature, but, we try to build ways of not being completely destroyed when there's a disaster, or, being able to have farmland in a place that maybe it was really hard to grow before, so on and so forth, right? All of these great feats that we can accomplish by understanding the laws of nature and then applying them in our favor, in the favor of humanity. And the same with society, right? It's about discovering those laws of society and then how best to reflect the direction forward. Incorrectly doing that will absolutely make a mess of revolution, right? Correctly doing that will lead to successive revolution and the people power growing stronger and stronger all the time, which is, again, it's not a dinner party, right? It's a messy fucking thing, but it's either we move forward and we fight against imperialism, or we don't. It's like, do you want, we want to go forward. Marxist-Leninists are really concerned about what's the next step towards human independence. And then from there, what's now the next step towards human independence? Until we have fully realized human independence for all. And again, that's in that regard, the state has then withered away. That no longer the state that exists as a tool of class oppression, its job is done, right? Which is why I say, like, that's what I love about Juche, because it says that humans struggling against the forces of nature to overcome fetters of nature. That's what led to initially some people getting more material gains than others in a particular location, Europe. And then those people saying, this is mine, not yours, even though everybody might have helped build this wealth in the society, which then led to this class cleavage, which then led to a class struggle. And unfortunately, those people that had all of the stuff, all of the goods, they were more powerful because they were able to bribe people. They were able to do this. And so that's what's led to this class struggle be this long drawn out thing where it was slave society for first, and then new oppressors emerge, because the class structure itself hasn't changed. Oppressors still exist. The reason why the working class, or Marx says socialism is inevitable with the working class, is because there's nobody below the working class. They have nothing. They have no property, right? All they have to sell is literally our bodies. We don't even the bourgeoisie doesn't even have a responsibility to keep us alive, because all they care about is the value that we can give into society. We're disposable. They care about the collective labor power of all of us, right? We want to make the human being precious, like in human society.
I think that all of those things are incredibly preferable to the bullshit we have now.
It sounds like we align, at least on perhaps more things than just ideology, perhaps a little bit on strategy.
I think it's more of a plan of attack, or maybe priorities.
Is that not strategy and tactics?
Well, priorities. I think that I don't know. Like I've asked you a lot of questions. Do you have any questions for me? Is what I would say.
I mean, like, I think we've kind of like addressed a lot of them because I was going to ask you, like, your definition of the state and these kind of things, but I feel like we've kind of gone over those things already, like,
yeah.
Maybe what I would ask is maybe members of my chat might have questions that they want to ask you.
Sure.
So I'll just say, like, anybody in chat who has any questions for Nick, feel free to bring it forward. I mean, and Callie, what I would say in response to that, though, is philosophy forms a worldview that can include methodology and strategy. And that's what Marxism-Leninism is. So Green Eggs and Hammer wants to know if you consider yourself a Marxist.
No.
Yeah, philosophy. I love this comment, Samuel. Philosophy without methodology is grasping conjecture. Nick, which of your enemy's spines is that hanging on your wall?
It's not an enemy. It's my mother's spine. That's the truth.
That was surprising.
Yeah.
Wow, chat. Wow. What are you thinking here? It's not about acknowledging which is better. It's about acknowledging their distinct philosophy and methodology. Okay. I just have a question of public health. Like, I do think it's a good thing to force people to take vaccines, Bry says.
To force people to take vaccines? I don't think that my philosophy is against the betterment of public health. Like, right. So in anarchism, we recognize expertise. We recognize intellectual authority, which is separate from, again, saying the buzzword of political authority. But of course, people would trust those who have knowledge that others don't. So if there's healthcare professionals saying everyone needs this vaccine, then, the people who would, be in my camp, I suppose, would take the vaccine. Those who don't take the vaccine, like, I think that those people are going to put others in danger, and that's another aspect that that would come with some repercussions for sure.
See,
if someone tries to refuse, I mean, so there is social repercussions that people can and have historically received for not doing things that are beneficial to the community, right?
Yeah, so historically, but how do you do that in the future?
For example, there is a community that I spent a lot of time with in Guatemala that is Quiche Maya, and they have a form of this sort of governance themselves. The way that they're organized is they have 40-some different mayors is what they would call it. And every family household has to be a mayor. That's like the social contract that people's civic engagement is compulsory in order to be part of the community. It's also not paid. The community supports those families as they do the mayoral work for 2 to 5 years, depending on the position. And I spent a lot of time with these individuals and talked to them specifically about this, like what happens to an individual who refuses to participate in the political system that is set up. And for one, he told me that never happens. But for your argument is like that person would become an outcast of the community. They would not be allowed to engage with the community. The anecdote that he used, which is just supposed to be a joke, so don't take it like too seriously, but if your house is on fire, no one's going to put it out. So there is like implications. There are consequences. Like, I'm not against consequences for people not engaging in that way as they should, if that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I would say, though, is like, rather than ostracizing them from the community, wouldn't it be better to re-educate them and integrate them into the community? Like, because ostracization in like a modern world is pretty much, that's like a death spell pretty well.
You and I would agree on that. I mean, I think that a lot of
like we want, like, I want to uplift people who
would rather just discount people they don't agree with than do some way to communicate their ideas. I think that, like, certainly ostracization is what we would call it. They would just call it, the cold shoulder. I don't think like removing that person from the society is what would actually happen.
Yeah. See, I just like that, like, because even like what you described there, it sounds like a smaller scale DPRK with less people, just with less people in a lot of the ways that it's organized, other than like in DPRK, if somebody like was not following their was not want to participate or whatever in the political system. They didn't want to go to, like, let's say Saturday political lectures or something, which a lot of people are encouraged to do. Like, they wouldn't be ostracized. They wouldn't be given the cold shoulder. You know, they would just, like, people in the community would, like, encourage them to learn better about the Workers' Party of Korea, you know, and learn better about how the policies are there to help them, and what if they actually, like, engage, like, how their representative can serve them, and how they can use the mechanisms to hold people accountable when they have a grievance, etc. Rather than, you know, because the whole goal of, like,
if I may, there is a difference for me between engaging politically versus, like, putting people in danger. If you're putting people in danger by not getting a vaccine, that's far more, you know, that's far more important than I think what you're describing.
Yeah, but the collective good, of course, is, like, because you have to understand.
This is one example of many, for the record.
Yeah, but when I'm saying that re-education, understand I'm saying, like, he might, like, because here's the thing. I understand individual liberty is important and everything, right? Don't get me wrong. But the collective independence, the collective good is more important, whether that's on a community scale or whatever else. And so, like you're saying, if this person is endangering people by not getting a vaccine, when I say re-education, I mean they might have to, like, they might have to go to a facility, an institution that has the ability to re-educate them, that can give them a program. Maybe it has therapy, it has political education, it allows them to practically engage maybe with a particular type of work or something like this, in order to help them learn how to integrate with society, why taking the vaccine is so important, why they should have that done. You know, like, that's what I mean, is, like, the person would be, like, you know, because, again, it's not down to superiors that have decided this, but if the community sees this person putting them in danger, then they're going to go to the security, like, their security representatives, and they're going to say, look, this person in our community, we've tried to get him to vaccinate himself and he just refuses. And you know how strained our medical system here is in the DPRK. Please, right? And he would, like, that would start a whole court proceeding where he's able to have a trial where the people, like, he would have his own people's witness there. He would be able to have his own lawyer of his own choosing to represent himself, to argue himself before they chose to do that. Like, you know, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not ostracization. It's trying to integrate that person, trying to educate them and get them back into, like, being a productive member of their community, rather than one that's going to cause harm.
Yeah, I wouldn't have, like, a one size fits all. There would be many approaches, depending on the community, the location, to do exactly what you describe. I don't think it is mutually exclusive, that you can have one and not the other.
Jamal asks, when does an organizational apparatus cross over into being bureaucratic in the negative sense of it we've been touching on?
Sure. So there is, definitely there needs to be coordination between people in a community. So when I say that I don't recognize or appreciate or think that, like, hierarchies are fair and just, it doesn't have to do with organization. There is indeed, a centralized, coordinated administrative effort that people can make, and they do make actively, like, in this right now. So where does it cross? It would be that someone says jump, and I can't refuse to jump. If they're a socially important person, doesn't that mean there's a hierarchy? Is that to me? If there's a socially important person?
Yeah,
The socially important.
actually,
who is the
and kind of in line
if
with
you
that,
think I
actually,
mean no rules, then I think you're missing
yeah.
legitimately
Well, I mean,
everything that
ignore
I'm saying.
now. I mean, you can ignore questions like that. We agree on
Yeah.
that. But just kind of like on the same subject as what Two Struggle says here. A socially important person. I just want to like say, remember what I was saying about like, again, that we see like Marxism-Leninism as not a philosophy like or a prescription that you apply, but rather it's a guide to action. It's a lens through understanding the world. We see it as like it's actually putting social understanding to a scientific lens, which is why we call it scientific socialism. So, like, in much the same way that you would trust, in much the same way that, like, and again, through experience and through the legacy and the proof of them successfully putting forward good positions that speak to the masses and correctly reflect the position forward, that the various people in the general staff of the revolution, the Communist Party, because they are, studying social, and not just Marxist, they just don't study like dogmatically Marxism-Leninism texts, right? They study science, and they go among the people and try to find out what their concerns are and what the best way to fulfill their needs are. And they try to put forward, again, a scientific policy. So in much the same way that you would trust a doctor because it is following science, that's the same relationship that we're trying to build between the party and the people, which is again why the party does not actually have bureaucratic direct hold over any state organs. The party is completely independent of the state as a means of fighting against bureaucracy. The state apparatus itself is the people's democracy, the people's administration. It's why Engels actually called it a semi-state.
Johnny, what's your question there about the socially important person? I don't think I understand.
That if there's a socially important person that they're seen as like because they have better knowledge in whatever field you just said about before, aren't they?
So
isn't that a hierarchy?
Not recognizing authority from someone in a political sense doesn't mean not recognizing expertise. So it's not that that person is socially important. We recognize that that person has studied and make a decision based on knowledge and based on science.
See, and that's what I'm telling you is the exact same thing that we're doing. That's what the party seeks to do. And that's why the party, like I said before with Joe Schmo, that's why the party's job would be to, it had all these cadres that are really dead, because they're communists like me, right? That are in the party. They're dedicated to wanting to improve people's lives. They're dedicated to wanting to overcome imperialism and capitalism. And they're studying the best ways to do it. They're going among the people to learn what their needs are, what their desires are, and trying to put forward the best policy in order to do that. So in the same way you're describing, they're not having political power over people. They're putting forward their expertise. And they're saying, at this stage in the revolution, what we should do is build lots of houses. And now, again, it will be up to the people in their workplaces. And the reason why the foundation of the democracy is in their workplaces is that's where people are spending most of their time, of course, right? And again, we seek to take work other than just being some mundane thing that you do and like a part of your life that you're proud of as well, and overcome alienation. And so like the state is like representing you in a way that it doesn't here. So this is what I mean by the state will put forward, or the party rather would put forward that we should do housing for all. And again, it's up to the party members and everybody else to go to these different organizations, whether it's a union or whether it's some state organ or whatever it is, and try and persuade people that this is the right time to try and do more housing. Now they can decide to go against that. Like I was saying, right? They can go a completely different way. And that has happened many times before in whether it's USSR or China or DPRK, But what happens is as the as the party wins the trust of the people more and more by having a correct policy and correctly reflecting the way forward, the people come to trust their expertise more and more. And so they align more and more with the party. And then when it says what we should do now is build new hospitals or build a factory, like, I know you don't like me taking a real example, but to take an example of DPRK, to say what we need now is to build a factory in every single county.
I don't like it.
What?
You just know like far more than I do about the DPRK. I don't think anyone on the planet knows more than you. So it's just like, it's not.
I mean, that's not true. I know people that know more than me, but I know people from DPRK. But like, so like, for example, when the 20 by 10 policy, right? The party put that forward and they said, we should build a factory in every single county. That didn't mean that now every single county is like, they have to do that or the leaders of that county will be thrown in jail. Instead, it's up to them now to like debate about like, how correct is the party on this? Do we need a new factory in our county? You know, what kind of factory do we need? And like, that's what I'm trying to get at. Like, we do want to remove what you're calling political power and turn it into experts who are studying the society, putting forward a scientific line. And if that scientific line is correct, that will win more and more people over to the party, that because they will see that it's correct.
Did I answer your question, Johnny? I hope I did. Any other questions?
I thought I see one here about the DPRK, but now I can't find the reply to it.
I'll leave that one to you.
Abraham Turkey. Is DPRK a Donkey Kong game? Yes.
That's how you know he's one of mine.
Does anyone in either chat have a question for either of us? Struggle says no, you didn't answer their question.
I mean, what part of the my statement didn't line up?
Like, what if you have someone who is socially important person for whatever reason that supports something that is ascientific or generally bad for the greater community?
Again, it's like it's free association. So like if there are bad influences inside the community, there are repercussions inside that community for said thing.
But where are the repercussions? Where are the repercussions coming from if he's so socially
ostracization or what have you? Like the community is in charge of determining what those repercussions are, and every person in that community has.
Yeah, but can I just ask, first of all, in the situation that Two Struggle is talking about, that person would have such influence over the community that they would be misguided by him, and that's what he's asking, that they have been led down the path along with him of a scientific understanding. Like you're saying that the community would just be aware of this problem, right? But he's saying that what if the community,
yeah, I think
what if this person, like, let's say this person was a doctor and he did lots of good stuff, right, for the community for a long time. And then for whatever reason, he decided to use that influence, that expertise, that trust that he has gained for something that is bad, again, and influences a huge number of the community, the majority of the community, into an ascientific understanding.
Joe Schmo went to medical school. He's an MD now, right?
Well, I mean, I'm giving you a different imagined scenario.
Oh, yeah. So if Joe Schmo with his MD decides to, take a route that is antagonistic to his society, he uses his professional expertise for ill, then that is something that I think that the society does have the tools and the capacity to go about finding a suitable solution, repercussion for. I think that it's a fallacy that bad ideas have like majority sway over people. So this would be like just, whatever your personal opinions are. I think that bad ideas get amplified right now in our current political system because it is advantageous to be as greedy and disgusting and horrible as possible. That elevates you and rewards you in our current society. But in this, society that we're talking about, where Dr. Schmo has is being cruel, the majority will not be the people in the society who want to also do harm or have fallen to the wrong prescription.
But we have seen that happen with USSR, for example, thanks to like US influence.
Yeah, but that you would admit too that that is not like a perfect representation. Like imperialism has not been destroyed.
Exactly. And
capitalism.
So that's what I'm saying. You're imagining an already communist society, and then we no longer have a distinction anymore because, again, our differences, from what I think, our differences are a tactical understanding of how to get to that end society of humanity's independence. So what you're talking about is a situation where we're already overcome the hangovers of capitalist society and where there is no external, like, that's what I'm, right? And I was talking about when I was talking about Joe Schmo earlier, I was not. I was talking about a society where imperialism still exists, where those external threats still exist, and the revolution must move towards that state of humanity's independence.
Sure, but you brought up the USSR as a counterpoint to me saying that this
because again, I'm talking about while there's imperialism still existing. I did not realize you were talking about a society where imperialism had already disappeared.
Well, I think like I see what you're getting at. So
there was a disconnect there because I thought you were talking about a hypothetical anarchist movement where imperialism still exists and you have to still fight against that. I did not realize you were talking about a society where there was no imperialism and no capitalism anymore.
The influences wouldn't have reached it. There's no.
So then in that case, see, in that case, though, the thing is,
the USSR was influenced in its past by global imperialism.
What?
So if you're using the USSR as an example of like a society where, but I don't think you are, where like imperialism is not like penetrated and guided the governance in some way. It has.
No, exactly. That is my entire point.
So
again, that's my entire point because I was again talking about a society that still has that external pressure. So you need mechanisms again of dealing with somebody who maybe over a large community has gained that type of influence that Two Struggle is talking about. And you need to have because if we're talking about a society where people have already overcome those hangovers of like bourgeois society and imperialism is already gone, etc., then yeah, I agree with you. People won't succumb to that anti-scientific attitude because they will have spent a multi-generational revolutionary period of learning science, of learning technology, and also of following a scientific socialist program. So I agree with you in that if you're talking about the end stage of society. But if we're talking about a society like the USSR, or a society, the imagined Joe Schmo society, where there are still imperialist forces on the outside, then I can absolutely see a situation where due to imperialist influence, due to hangovers of pre-existing bourgeois society, people can be led the wrong way in mass amounts. And USSR proves that. Because again, when they allowed a little bit of imperialist penetration, which is Khrushchev's mistake with perestroika and glasnost and opening up, when they allowed that little window of imperialist cultural infiltration, and it led to, it was a twofold problem, mind you. I'm not blaming it all on external pressure, because at the same time, like I told you before, there was a problem that USSR later on especially fell into a bureaucratic problem. It did not discover the mass line that China and DPRK says is so vital for the survival of revolution. So it made all of these mistakes. It was not educating the people. It was not using Marxism-Leninism as a guide to action. It was using it like a catechism, right? And so these mass mistakes did occur. And a lot of and imperialist influence also played a huge role, to the degree that people started falling into illusions about capitalist society and thinking that America was such a great society and that it has all this freedoms and all of this abundance of goods, and they refused to see the actual bad parts of America. And that's what led them to this referendum eventually, where it's like, you know, well, we want to keep our socialist system, but we want to also let the capitalists in too. And like I said, once they did that and let the capitalists in and allowed this plurality, this plural liberal democratic system, it immediately destroyed whatever was left of that revolution, right? It destroyed, and as we know, Yeltsin went in, and all of the people's, everything that the people had built up over those generations was sold off to capitalists at fire sale prices. You know, so like the people were fooled en masse into an unscientific idea, is my point.
So I think that perhaps the misunderstanding is, I foresee that sort of misinfo, you know, or disinfo, manipulation of people. I see that to be far more likely under the, you know, a situation in which imperialism still has sway. I don't see it like there's nothing that convinces me that a society that no longer has these influences to it's still going to happen, sure. Like, we're never going to have
yeah, but it'll be a minority thing that society will just be able
a minority
see
thing.
we agree on that. That's exactly what I'm saying. We agree on that once
I listen, I think that like people will probably take away that we disagree on like a fuck ton. I think that where we got to was our definition of, you know, political power was like the major one.
Yeah, as far look,
that, I mean, it's more about,
again. Look, I didn't mean to belittle you, but call me whatever. You can call me an anarchist in disguise.
I don't want to,
and I'll call you a Marxist in disguise. But because look, at the end of the day, just like DPRK has Juche and Kim Il Sungism, the guiding scientific ideology here, who knows what the fuck it'll be called, right? Maybe it'll be, you know, it'll be silly boyism, which was a Mi'kmaq leader, right? Like maybe it could be silly boyism, like Buffaloism. I don't know, you know, like, and
whatever it is, I hope it's not like the teachings of an individual person. Like that's my,
and
right?
it never, but
like,
that's my point. It never
regardless
is.
Of what you call it, if you are like, the ideal, right now we're talking like really big abstracts, is that there is nothing that you know, right, people will remember about like the core instrumental person for utopia. That person will not be remembered. They shouldn't be remembered.
I mean, I think that's your own personal opinion. For myself, I can't decide what the masses decide on how to relate to their individuals, including people that they have trusted for their expertise rather than having political power over them.
But like, this is the thing, is like, we appreciate their expertise. It doesn't matter who that person is or what their name is, or anything about them personally. It should be what they have done. That's like, you know, the that should be enough.
But
like,
Nick, you're putting a lot of. Let me just say, you're putting a lot of.
Someone put up like that, like that. Just, I feel like re-entrenches the idea that you know, there's really great people and really bad people, or not. That's not what I mean at all. There's people who are superior in one way or the other because of the nature of their greatness.
But what I'm saying is,
along those lines,
you're putting a lot of, and I appreciate the argument, but I'm just saying you're putting a lot of emphasis on should, that you feel that it should be this way. And what
absolutely.
What I'm saying though is it's up to the masses how they want to relate to other people in their society. Like with DPRK, for example. Again, it was a mass collective democratic decision that involved the entire society to build a statue, let's say, of Kim Il-sung, which I guess you might take some offense to. And what I'm saying is, what would be the authoritative power that then says to the masses of people who have collectively decided in vast majority that we want to build this statue of this person that didn't lord over us, didn't wield political power over us, but inspired us to build our own system that represents ourselves, that has served ourselves, that has fought against the capitalists, that is still defending us against the imperialists. We want to build a statue of this person that inspired us, not as a way to like. And I mean, the moral reasons and all those other things, that's irrelevant because we can't control that of the masses. So what would be the authoritative body that tells them, no, you cannot do that? Sorry, you can't build that statue. The masses themselves are the ones who build revolution.
Yeah, I'm not advocating for something rigid. Like, you know, if people build a statue, they can build a statue. I don't think that is something that, hang on, I don't think that that's like desirable, right? Yeah, you're right. I am saying should, because if I'm like being true to my principles here, the Communist Manifesto is influential regardless of whose name is on it, and stuff like, you know, like DPRK, the liberation efforts of the you know, the armed personnel who attained freedom for their country, who attained sovereignty, is more important than the individual Kim Il-sung. And I think that you would agree with that. But so
are you saying that they don't...
I think we're looping and looping and looping.
I know, but listen, my question for you then in response to that is, so are you saying people in DPRK don't understand that?
Save JFK. Save me from what? Save me from what?
Ignore chat. Just listen. Let me ask you.
I think that it's hard to have a conversation like if like there is this like talking down to. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, you don't think I'm talking down to you, do you?
I think that you have at like a couple of points, but I don't mind.
Okay. Well, I apologize if I have.
It's okay. I called you out on them.
I mean, the thing I would ask you though is do you believe that people in DPRK don't see Kim Il-sung as that? You believe that they have a rigid view as Kim Il-sung?
I don't know enough about the DPRK, which is why I think like it's.
But see, making hypotheticals is not
conversate about when I'm like up against the expert.
Oh no, but the thing is, like, what I'm trying to get across is like, we have to follow concrete reality. We have to follow the actual steps. And the reason I pointed out about the statue thing is because in the revolutionary experiences that exist that are fighting off imperialism still, it wasn't the party, it wasn't Fidel Castro, it wasn't Che Guevara, it wasn't Ho Chi Minh who decided to build statues of them. It was the people. Because the people...
you're missing my point entirely. Like,
I'm not missing your point. I'm not missing your point. I understand your opinion about that.
To do something, like, they're allowed to do that. I'm saying, like, there is... You know, I don't care what they do. They're allowed to do whatever they want.
Right, and you're allowed to have your...
negate the fact that they are they're literally putting someone on a pedestal. They're literally affixing an individual to an actual pedestal.
I understand that you feel that way. But what I'm saying is that the revolutions that are ongoing, The masses have decided to put that person on a pedestal. And when you talk to those people in every single revolutionary country from Cuba to DPRK to China, they don't see Mao Zedong or Kim Il-sung as being some wonderful, magical individual who came forward with the magical text. They see him as being a representation of their collective work together as a society.
You missed my meaning. I'm not saying that those people are wrong in their beliefs. Like, you missed my meaning. I'm not saying that that is something that should not be done or cannot be done.
I'm not saying that you're saying that, though, Nick.
Hang on. You've talked a lot. Is that what I'm saying is that regardless of what those people want to do and their beliefs, they're allowed to believe that. I'm saying that a future that I envision that we're discussing here does not prioritize or condone or advocate for that sort of behavior.
Okay.
They're allowed to do it. And listen, like everything that you've said, like people are going to come away thinking that I like disagree vehemently with the successes of the DPRK and the USSR. I don't. And it feels like, I don't know. I'm not advocating for neoliberal socialism. And I don't know. I'm not. Or neoliberal fucking hell. I'm tired. I'm really tired.
I mean, yeah. I just want to say, I don't think that you're saying those people are wrong. That's not what I'm saying. I understand that you see that as a form of putting somebody above society, or you're seeing that as you're seeing them as that like them overlooking their collective contribution because they're putting too much stock in the individual. I understand your concern about that. Like, and listen, I also understand that
iteration that like the specific people in these places want to do something. Like, I understand that they want to do something, and I'm not telling them that they shouldn't.
Right.
Like,
okay. But
repetition of that, I think, is like, yeah, like I agree.
So can I just say that, like, if we're talking about, which you just said you were talking about the anti-imperialist, the society where capitalism doesn't exist anymore, and you're saying in that society, people won't be put on a pedestal anymore, right? Is that what, am I understanding correctly?
I like Johnny said, it's creating a culture. Like I would want, in a very vague sense, not to facilitate any deification or pedestaling of anybody. If they want to do that, they're allowed to do that. Right,
but you're saying this is in your society in the future where there is no imperialism, or are you saying this about DPRK, is what I'm asking you.
I'm not talking about the DPRK. You're talking about the DPRK.
Okay, then a society that's like the DPRK that's fighting against imperialism.
Okay. If there's someone, if there is, you know, if we're talking directly about the DPRK, which has been under siege and has to had specific, you know, policies in place to resist that ongoing siege, that injustice, and that they have a specific government which entrenches, you know, this prolonged resistance to imperialism. I'm saying, my question is, where's the cutoff point? Like, I feel like if imperialism is the constant threat and we're going to have this sort of state until there is no longer imperialism and it's going to happen really far down the road, then my question is, at what point do we transition fully into this completely egalitarian system? It seems like not an excuse, but it seems like a justification to continue to maintain forms of control that I don't think I agree with.
Okay. I just say that, so my answer to that would be that we don't have the data for that because imperialism is still here and we still have to fight against it. And that I don't know what the future communist society will look like because, in a sense, I don't know. That the people will be so transformed and will be so different from who we are today. They will have spent generations without imperialism, without capitalist exploitation, without these sexism, without patriarchy, without these things. So I cannot know what those people will be like. Gender will probably be abolished. They probably won't have people put on pedestals. I simply cannot know that. I also cannot know how long imperialism will take to defeat. But I do think that imperialism is the number one thing threatening humanity. And we're talking decades left of struggling against imperialism, or we're facing serious, serious crises, not just of climate, but of like political upheaval, civil war, etc. And that's why the most important thing to me, rather than what that future communist society will look like, is how do we fight against imperialism right now? And that's my laser focus.
It just sounds like JFK's perspective is that communism isn't happening soon enough as an argument against socialism. I'm not arguing against socialism. I'm not even criticizing communism in the way that I think you think, like this specific person is. I think that, again, communism is much more favorable to anything that we have right now. And I would, if Larry's leading the vanguard, I would march side by side with him. I am simply saying that I disagree about like how there shouldn't even be a state, right? There shouldn't be political power. And I think we'll circle on this part here.
And again, in the situation I just said about, I completely agree with you.
So what do you think, Larry? Do we want to slit each other's throats now?
I mean, no, not at all. Again, like I would fight in your trench just as much, because like I said from the beginning of this, same with so many social democrats, even liberals, as much as it pains me to say it, align with us morally. It's that we have tactical and strategical differences, sometimes differences in understanding of definition, etc. And again, this is what I say. The thing, I mean, I would like to interject. It is not impossible to know what future communist society will look like in terms of things you mentioned, sexism, racism, etc. No, and I didn't mean to say we won't know anything about communist society. We know that we will have overcome the old prejudices, because that's the entire definition of communism. The entire definition of communism is the overcoming of all of the fetters that restrict humanity and realizing a society that is the perfect expression of humanity's independence. The perfect expression of our collective good serving also the individuality. Because we have spent a long time, again, overcoming imperialism, overcoming capitalism, overcoming all of those other things you have mentioned. What I mean to say is we cannot know like what the particular arrangements will be in that regard. What
I think like that is, if that's how you state that, then to like the previous question before about like vaccines, is like, if I'm thinking about this egalitarian system, I don't have like the specific punishment right now, the specific remedy right now for how we would get the
right. Well, we would agree there then. You see how much we agree on?
But then it's like, I mean, I won't hold you accountable for things your chat is saying, but
for things my chat is saying.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, my chat, I allow people to come into my space and learn about Marxism. So
yeah, absolutely.
My chat says lots of things that even I disagree with all the fucking time.
Yeah.
That's part of my stream, right? Is that I welcome people who are new to Marxism, people who are new to communism in general, into my space, and I invite them to ask me questions about DPRK or USSR or whoever it is. So and I'm not saying about this about any individual's chat, so please don't take anything personally, but I'm just saying that there's people here who are new to Marxism, who maybe have not organized in Marxist-Leninist parties for very long, who do not know what it means to actually engage in broad coalition work, or what it means to morally align, or even have an ideological conversation.
I understand,
and
that.
I apologize for any of those people being in chat.
No, of course. I think like our conversation was, the point of this was not like a debate, but a conversation. And I thought it was just like a good conversation. Like I enjoyed speaking to you.
Yeah.
I think that like allowing specific community members, even if you disagree with them, to I don't know, like try to frame me in a way that I am, I don't know, like I don't want to call out individual people, but I feel like that fosters the exact divisions that we talked about not like perpetuating. Like if audience members walk away from this saying like, yeah, Nick is just a baby Marxist-Leninist in the making, I'm going to discount everything he says, right? Which is something that you did, fan to the flame, then, I feel like it kind of isn't really impactful in the same way it could have been.
Okay. So what would you like me to do?
Oh, not like nothing. I enjoy talking to you all the time.
Okay. I was just wondering if there's something you want me to do with chatters or something.
No, I think that like if anyone in here, anyone in my community like disrespected you, I would call that out. Chat didn't do it. It's okay, guys.
I mean, Luan, like, see, your chatter is saying stuff too, Nick. Like this, your VIP here is saying, I'm not new to Marxism or DPRK. I am one, and one of my best friends has lived in DPRK for a while now. I think we need not to frame utopian communist future as something devoid of prejudice. I mean,
that's not a...
I mean, I never said that. We both, me and Nick both agreed... Nick and I both agreed that little reactionary things could happen, but because overwhelming society is in this independent communist society, they would be able to struggle to overcome this in a way that does not exist today, where there's a state apparatus and where it can lead to a larger class conflagration. So I appreciate the conversation. It's just I don't see your chatters as what you're saying. You know, your chatters are separate from you, because I understand you also have an educational space. Right?
Yeah,
this is why
I wasn't looking at chat.
This is why it's almost, it would almost be better if we had a conversation without chat and put it on YouTube.
I had like a big like window over chat, and I only looked at chat during the question section. I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, you know, and again, I'm not trying to insult my audience or anybody's audience. I'm just saying, if we're by nature an educational space, you understand that there's going to be people in chat who are not necessarily on the same understanding of Marxism-Leninism and the strategy I would employ even towards talking with you. And so, you know, that, and part of this is supposed to be, you know, us kind of showing an example for a chat if we can, I guess. Which is why, I mean, again, maybe it would have been beneficial to not have chat at all.
Yeah, maybe. But it's okay. I mean, like, here's the deal is I think, you know, I watch you, I listen to you. I know you do the same for me from time to time as well. I think that we both have plenty of things that we can learn from each other, and anyone who is depriving themselves of our alternative viewpoints is doing themselves a deep disservice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why I rage you. if
Nick needs to go full LML. I should stop reading chat.
Yeah,
Even
I
if
mean,
it takes 6 to 12 months.
I mean, you can't even. Here's the thing about chat to begin with. You can't even actually tell how sincere anybody is in chat. Neither can
That's
I
true.
when I'm even talking to somebody and somebody
The
comes in and asks.
neurodivergence makes it even worse because I'm like, am
Yeah.
I just
I know,
fucking misreading this
Hey,
completely?
Nick, I've been defending DPRK for 20 years. Can you imagine the type of chatters and comments I've gotten online? Like, people asking me the most, like, you know, unfriendly, the most disingenuous questions possible. It's just, that's part of the nature, unfortunately, of political education. There's a reason why we employ terms like dogma, etc., because that's the first example. You really got to train yourself to be a good revolutionary.
Yeah. I just like, and we don't even have to continue on this. I just think that like any discussion that poses your, the person you're talking to as like, well, you know, I don't even know if this is worth even reiterating. It probably isn't. I made my point about it.
I mean, I
don't have
agree on
anything else
both
to
ends,
say.
on both sides.
Yeah.
Like I said, that's why I pointed out.
I think it, like, if I was to be like critical, I think it opened up the avenue for people to make those sorts of remarks. But I do understand where you're coming from.
But I mean, I see
especially for
remarks on
someone
your
who
end
has, like,
coming from your
a
chat.
very long political path, like much longer than mine, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, I have seen comments like that coming from your chat as well the whole time I've been talking about specific socialist countries or this or that other example, and I'm just ignoring them for a reason, because we're having the conversation.
Right, but
So
I don't want to rehash, but it's the comment you made about how I'm a Marxist-Leninist.
Okay, well, I was just joking with you. I was just joking with you, but okay.
For people to make those sorts of comments to me.
Again, I'm sorry that was deeply offensive to you.
Streamer.
I apologize that you're deep. That was offensive to you.
That's why I didn't want to. Like,
I didn't mean it that way, and I didn't mean it to belittle you. All I meant was as a lighthearted joke to say we align more than we disagree.
Yeah.
And so I apologize if it was misinterpreted as me belittling you or saying that you just don't know any better. I was just making a joke that we align more than you realize. Because again, like I just told you, I don't know whether...
I just wanted to be clear so that I wasn't like sidestepping exactly like my intentions here.
Yeah.
Like if I said something to spur on my chat to like talk shit, then, you know, that's
I mean, I don't think you did, and I mean, if you think that joke of mine did, then I apologize, but I don't. I mean, again, I just mean to say that we align more than we disagree. Just like I align again morally and in wanting a better world and wanting a better future without coercion and oppression of humanity by humanity. I align with you on that. I align with many, many liberals on that who are in that camp, you know, democratic socialists, whoever else. I align with those people on that. So, and if we all have a role to play in building a revolutionary movement, so be it, you know? And it's like I said before with the democratic socialists, with whoever. It's like I said, I'm not trying to change. If you remember near the beginning, I said, I'm not trying to change any democratic socialist or trying to change anybody into like a Marxist-Leninist necessarily, because I understand that even they in their positions, whatever position that is, liberals, whoever, they play a role in like moving people towards experiences that push them towards revolutionary consciousness, whatever that exactly looks like here on this continent. Again, whether, you know, whatever shape or form that takes, the people will decide that, especially led by the most formerly oppressed people, indigenous people, black people, you know, the people whose lands were stolen.
That we agree on. At like no ifs, ands, or buts.
So I think that's the most important thing. That we agree. Our chat are a bunch of shits, right? And I think this was a good conversation overall. I really do
too.
think we highlighted that you can have an ideological conversation without personal attacks, without belittling each other, even though I did
Yeah.
without intending to.
Honestly, I regret bringing it up as many times as I did, because now I really, it doesn't. It's so beyond the question. Yeah, when is a part 2? Do you
I'm
want to do
always-
something like this in the future?
Yeah, I'm always open to discuss with you anytime.
Cool.
Absolutely.
What do you want to read for me to convert into an audiobook? What book do you want to contribute to the People's Library?
That's a good question. I would really like to do Socialism and Man in Cuba, I think.
Ooh, that'd be cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's
I have
just about
so
my
many
favorite
to
Che
edit.
Guevara work. Like, this is the thing, Lev. I do hope that this conversation, for any faults that might have happened on either side of us, because we're human, even in the best conversations like this, that's gonna happen. Okay? That's just humans
true.
conversating, okay? Even my best friends and I, we do that all the time. But I do hope that it can show an example of how people from different political understandings and different tactical understandings can discuss those differences, can discuss the things we agree on, and maybe we'll see more Marxist-Leninists doing this with social democrats, not in the old way, or whatever, everybody, right? Not in the old way that we did it on Twitch, where it was like this debate bullshit, but in a new way that's a revolutionary way where people can make up their own minds and hear what we each have to say, and maybe they'll even be they have a creative interpretation that works for their own community.
Yeah,
That connects them to anti-imperialist struggle, though, because I think that's the most important thing. Anti-imperialism is number one, in my opinion.
that is. I think that's I said this like in a previous stream. It should be the North Star. If you're not centering the end of those sorts of domination at the core, like then you are as a gust of wind is going to blow you over in terms of like what you're standing on. I mean, like that is at the end, that's what it should be.
Yeah. You going to bed? No. Oh, well, I'm sorry for being so loud.
Close the door.
Okay. I'm wild, and my wife tells me I'm. To be fair, I'm always loud though, so that's just normal.
She was loud on the phone the other day.
Yeah.
Did she end up saying that to chat?
Yeah, I did. I told her that I wish she would speak into the microphone like that.
What'd she say to that?
She's practicing it now. She's trying to speak louder now. I said about you talking loud into your phone, and then I said I'm trying to get you to talk louder into the mic like that.
Why, could they hear me?
Hello.
Outside when you were talking on the phone the other day. Now they
Hello.
they can hear you when you speak
Okay,
at that
I just wanna
volume.
make sure they couldn't see me.
No, they can't. I mean, they can see your elbow a little bit.
How long have y'all been married?
2 years,
2 years?
but we've been together
10?
10 years.
You were gonna say like 6?
I don't know. I get stuck in time. Yeah,
Yeah.
10 years. And then we got married because she said she wanted to change her name.
Yeah, to Parker.
Okay.
I want to take my mom's maiden name.
Okay, well, either way. And then so
Yeah.
we got married.
That's so I just turned 30 and now I'm like, man, I should find a family. I'm like at that point.
Yeah.
I didn't think it would happen. I told myself, oh, I'm chill.
I mean,
And then that day came and passed.
Nick, I'm 40 and I got a dysfunctional family, so my wife and my current wife and I mean, I wasn't married before, but my wife and I have been married for 2 years. My son is 14 years old, so
Yeah. I mean,
13.
God.
He's almost 14.
Yeah, in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, a couple weeks, exactly.
So he's 13.
Okay.
I have
My
I was
wife
like,
is
I have a
very
dog, that's
scientific.
enough.
She should be in the vanguard.
Eh.
Sorry, what were you
Yeah.
saying, Nick?
Just like I have a dog, and I was like, that's all I need.
I mean,
And I'm like, oh man, this 1-bedroom apartment is kind of empty, even with my dog.
well, I met my wife on Tinder, so
So it is possible.
you
Do
can do
okay,
it.
So
It can happen even online, apparently.
Like,
this is real,
People
Larry.
who don't go to like the bar or
Yeah,
Like,
we're both
don't-
autistic, so
we don't like people.
I need to find myself a neurodivergent baddie, you know, who can
Tinder. You need Tinder. That's where they all are because nobody.
Larry, this is a true story. It just happened last week. I was on Tinder and I matched with an Israeli. I didn't know that was what was happening. And then it happened and I'm like, oh shit. Yes. And then I tried to debate them, not like convince them of the wrong ways.
This is
right?
getting worse and worse.
It didn't work out. You know, go figure. They weren't receptive to my anti-Zionist principles.
You didn't know. You don't say.
I told them to watch stream. I was like, I talk about anti-Zionism every day. You should come in stream. Maybe they're here right now.
There you go. So become anti-Zionist, and then maybe you can date Nick.
Yeah. The second person. This is. I mean, it's just like this shows you what the environment is like. The other person I matched with, one of the first things that they told me is that they're fan of Ethan Klein.
Oh God. Maybe you need to rewrite your bio or something like that.
Anti-Zionist is the fucking second word in the bio.
Something's not working right. The algorithm's working against you somehow. We need to figure something out.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Don't I know it?
No, I think this was a good conversation myself. I don't give a shit what chat says, Nick. Fuck them.
Yeah, I think it's, if I'm gonna be real, it's like I don't think I've had this long of a political discussion. So it's probably like, I don't know, endurance stuff that like against my better judgment type thing.
Yeah, no. I
That makes
mean,
sense.
you know, like I say, we're both human.
When you see the puppy, do you mind if I show my daughter to chat?
Yeah, no, my wife would probably like to see your puppy, I'm sure. What do you got there?
Your bolo tie.
Oh. Well, I'm not gonna put it on right now.
No, I just saw it and I'm opening it.
This
Aw.
is Wednesday.
Aww. Sweet darling.
Her name is
See, I want
Wednesday.
one
I
of
named her
those.
after.
We got like 4
Wednesday.
cats. Like, look at the house. There's like cats everywhere. Look, there's one there. There's
There's
one
4
there.
in
There's like
sight.
one behind me. There's another one in here. I think we got enough animals at the look. There's this weird looking one down here.
Aww. Little baby. I have a on my purse. Oh my god. She did the cute thing.
Oh, nice.
That's her chair.
I love that.
I have
Trying to figure out
like on my personal Instagram account is a photo album called Cats I Saw, and it's all the cats that I've seen in like the last 10 years.
I love
A
that.
really long album.
I love that.
Fuck his photo from last night to be in it.
Yeah. What are you doing?
I was testing it out. No.
What do you mean? Come back.
No.
Oh, okay. My wife put on a bolo tie. She was looking stylish.
Oh yeah.
Normalize bolo ties.
I
That's
am.
like-
I'm doing that right now. Look, I just bought that one. I told Chad I would get a bolo tie.
I have a lot of bolo ties. I have like 10 bolo ties.
Yeah, you have 6
Is that too
bolo
many?
ties.
That's too many.
3, 4, 5.
It's the best type of tie.
Yeah, 6 bolo ties.
I agree.
Yeah.
What are you planning to do with the rest of your stream?
I was thinking about ending in a minute. I might do this game that I do with Chad every day, which is called When Taken, and then I was gonna raid out probably. It's a game. Have you ever heard of this game?
I have not.
Okay.
How much of a gamer are you? Because do you play spooky games?
Oh yeah.
He plays everything.
Do you have phasmophobia?
I don't, but I mean, I know what it is, and I would be interested probably. I play games like that, absolutely. You're suggesting some sort of playing it together.
We should play phasmophobia together at a certain point in the future.
Yeah, I would be down. That could be a spooky month type of situation.
Oh, we're not
I like that. So tell me what the game is you were saying.
Oh, When Taken. So it's like GeoGuessr. You play it in your browser. It's like GeoGuessr, but you also have to guess when the picture was taken and where.
Wait, I think I saw Kel Thickness playing that. He plays a lot of those kinds of games.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool because it'll be like this historical photograph or something like last night. Last night was one from Paris Commune that we recognized immediately as being from the Paris Commune.
That's sick.
Yeah.
I love that. I've been playing a lot of GeoGuessr lately, so I have this friend that knows what country they're in based on like the paint that they use for the road stripes.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
That's amazing.
I mean, it's this very specific kind of neurodivergence that I really fucking appreciate.
Yeah. See, I have the kind where I put video games in a specific order for no particular reason. That's useful to people.
Yeah, so I think I told you this before. Like, I got a OCD diagnosis that I wasn't prepared. I was like, what? And then I started like systematically organizing shit in my apartment, and I'm like, okay, no, that's fucking accurate, actually. Anyway.
Well, what I will do, Laney, is I'm gonna make a video about the Marxist theory of Mario. But all you need to know is Bowser's the good guy. Let me say this: don't believe the anti-Bowser propaganda, Nick.
Well, it's this reminds me of there's the Marxist analysis of Shrek. Have you seen that video?
I have not, but I've heard of it.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I would like to watch that. I would definitely check that out.
All right, comrade. I'm going to watch a movie with my chat. We're gonna watch Send Help.
Okay, well, probably then you'll still be streaming by the time I'm done When Taken, and
cool.
I'll probably jump into your stream after that, and chat will fucking be on their best behavior. Or Nick will be giving me a list of people.
No, I won't. All right.
All right, comrade.
So
seriously, though, it was very good to talk to you. I do hope that this is like a model of a different way for people of different political understandings, different tactical understandings to conversate with each other, especially while I see some more heated things happening right now in the content creation space. So,
you and me both. All right.
Yeah.
Peace out.
Love you, comrade.
You too, brother.
All right. What do we think, chat? Productive? I felt like overall it was productive. I could be mistaken. I am autistic, so I could misinterpret things, but I thought that was pretty damn good. You know? And this is what I mean. Here's what I'll say. Right? Here's what I'll say though, just to use another example. There's a reason why when I talk to comrades, like let's use Hassan as an example since nobody can type that in chat. The reason why I tell people yeah, and I mean Alexandra, I didn't expect, like, whenever there's a conversation like that, it's not about moving anybody directly involved in the conversation ever. That's not the point. It's more making content for the masses to engage with. Something that can reach people that might be wondering about these questions, right? So like what I was saying about, like, with Hassan, it's why we focus on the actual politics themselves. It's why we focus on the ideology, the philosophy, the tactics, and the strategy, rather than the individuals. Because individuals inadvertently or willingly or knowingly or whatever else it is, they have a role, in a sense, to play in the revolution. Marxist-Leninists, we see ourselves as having the scientific formula for revolution. So by nature of that, as the masses are more and more come up to the limitations against trying every other version of struggle, we think that they will come to align behind those with the correct political line. We believe that's us. Anarchists believe that that's them. You know what side of that particular tactical argument I'm on, right? And that's what this conversation is meant to be. People can make their own decision, and at the same time, I hope it shows that we can have a conversation like that, and also at the same time, wanting to be fighting against the most important thing, like JFK said as well, which is imperialism. I'm willing to sit down and have a conversation with anybody who sees imperialism as the number one problem, regardless of what they call themselves. Yo, Goobin Life, thank you so much, comrade. Thank you. So, yeah, I'm gonna cut this out. We'll put this on YouTube because I do think it was a productive conversation. Overall, I think we mostly ignored the chat other than genuine conversations, and I think that was a good thing to do, like I say, because it was meant to be a conversation where people are learning from us. Yeah, I mean, that's what I say, right? At the end of the day, the thing that will decide is the experience. So, and I do hope that you take what Nick said to heart as well, and what I'm saying about moving people to heart, right? Remember what I said before. You don't need to be, if we go into Nick's space, if we go into anybody's space, even a social democrat, whatever, any space at all, even if we go into a non-political space. Because here's the thing I want you to understand. On this platform, I will even raid indigenous or other comrades. Why did that flash up? I will raid indigenous and other comrades, whoever else, people who might not talk politics at all. Okay? And so I do want you to, in a sense, to take, because I'm giving you the same message as well. I want you to take what Nick said to her and understand that that was a time to discuss the differences. But if you go into Nick's chat and you go and hang out there, you're there to be in Nick's space. And I want as comrades, as good Marxist-Leninists, just like you would if you were in the Veterans for Peace or whatever other organization you're in, when you were doing actual party work, you don't go in there to like cause shit or disrupt, or you're in there to be respectful of Nick's space and learn. These are, these are content creation spaces. And in doing so, regardless of wherever we go, you also are ambassadors for this community and show people how we are able to engage. You show people how we have, people's interests in mind first and foremost, that we care less about changing every single individual into Marxist-Leninists, which we understand we will be the minority even during a revolution. Even when the revolution happens, we'll be the minority. So understanding that, we understand we don't need to change every single individual's mind. So even if it was in other party structures, we can go into those spaces and we can be good ambassadors of the communities that we're coming from, whether that's Dave's or Madeline's, whatever tank tubers, right? Go in there, be a guest, respect that space. If you have disagreements, you can keep them to yourself, because there's no point in bringing up something out of nowhere in a stream that doesn't welcome that. Understand the rules, understand what is welcome, and follow that. And in doing so, we invite people that lurk and go between all of these different communities to see friendly communities interacting with each other that are aligned on anti-imperialism. They will come in our spaces and they will hear our position on things. As hard as that might be to do, that is the Marxist-Leninist way. Don Dark Zone. That is the Marxist-Leninist way, right? Like, at the end of the day. And that's what we have to understand. Because solidarity soup. I'm caught. Uh-oh. Because what I want to show you a question right here. Or a quote right here. Which is that it's the revolutionary's duty to go among the masses, to mix with the masses, to mingle with them, and to raise the people's revolutionary consciousness, so that they themselves take up the struggle for socialism. That's the number one important thing. We serve the people. There are teachers. Like, on the one hand, we constitute the most revolutionary conscious elements, but that's because we're also of the people. So the people are our teachers. We're not divorced from the people. I mean, Rupert, what I will say about what I agree in the sense, though, that it is important to center anti-imperialism as being this, or imperialism rather, as being the source of Zionism, just as it was the source of manifest destiny, just as it was the source of the doctrine of discovery. If that makes sense. It's a subset of colonialism, which grows up to be imperialism. Yeah, Zionism is an extension of it, exactly. Having to re-educate after the masses have been so miseducated about socialism and Marxism-Leninism will be a challenge, but it's a challenge worth enduring. I mean, and this, for us, is what takes the longest. You think about how hard it is to materially have a revolution. Think about how hard it is to materialistically change the conditions of society, to smash that bourgeois state and to build the people state. Think about how hard that is. That's difficult, right? Really, really difficult. Guess what? Transforming the people and overcoming all of those old, outdated ideologies that existed before, a far more complex and protracted struggle. Which is why, even after imperialism has been dealt with, I do believe there will be an extremely long period of, let's say, persuasive struggle, if you will. A struggle of elevating the masses to the position of the most revolutionary elements by those revolutionary elements doing that. Yeah, I mean, look, like I say, these places have their role to play. When it comes to the DSA, their role to play is to try and get as many of these progressive candidates as elected as possible, people that we would morally align with on many subjects, that then allow the masses to experience the limitations of trying to act under this system that exists, which then allows Marxist-Leninists to do their job better of encouraging people to organize, encouraging more people, I should say, to organize with a vanguard. And also the vanguard's program becoming more and more popular. I want to end this like afterthought, I guess, with this quote right here by Kim Jong-il. The duty of revolutionaries is to go among the popular masses, masters of the revolution, to educate, organize, and inspire them to a struggle. The revolutionary forces, too, should be trained from among the masses, and all problems arising in the revolutionary struggle should likewise be resolved in reliance on their wisdom and strength. Because it's not the individuals who make revolution, it's the masses. Because the masses, if there is an omniscient and an omnipotent being in this society, it is the masses. In my opinion, that's my belief. My belief is that the masses are my God. That miracles are not something bestowed from heaven above. Miracles are something built by the masses in order to realize something beautiful from below. And Marxism-Leninism is an expression of that. I think there's a greater psyop by having these liberals cosplay as socialists, fuck up or lie when they get into office, and just tarnish the label of the masses. Like, socialism? Ew, I'm no fucking liberal. Whether they pivot to actual Marxism or not, who knows? I mean, again, I'm not in... But for me, Alexandro, I'm not worried about them changing their positions. Because the experience of those, like, because again, we cannot decide we cannot decide things for the masses for them. That's already the direction they're headed. It's up to us to keep pointing out that that's not socialism, to keep doing our job of criticizing the tactics, the definitions, and the strategy of social democracy or whatever else. Not to make enemies of them in that way. Again, remember, the Bolsheviks organized in a fucking party with the Mensheviks, with the social fucking revolutionaries, with all of these other elements. They organized in a party against these trends, right? So which just means we do have to do our job of not hiding those tactical, strategical, and definitional differences, right? We have to not hide those things. But at the same time, we have to be able to persuade people. And we have to be able to gain mass support while uplifting them and raising them to our revolutionary consciousness. So, and the reason I hone in on this is to say that we cannot say like, oh, you know, I would love for the masses to not be following for these social democrats, but they do, which is why we have to keep doing our job. And isolating ourselves and not being in the spaces where the liberals are will actually run counter to doing that. It will leave us isolated. We need to be able to persuade the liberals that we have the correct program, even if they don't become Marxist-Leninists themselves.